Hey everyone, and welcome to Living by the Law, the podcast discussing fictional worlds and how wondrous and ridiculous they are. My name is Matt, and I am joined by my co-hosts, Jude and Guy. Living by the Law is not currently sponsored. If you wish to sponsor us, weld your message into an ancient steel breastplate of a soldier whose story, long forgotten, will never be told. We will hear you. We always do.
This time we're looking at Brandon Sanderson's world of Scadrial from the Mistborn book series and the magic that lies within it. It of course goes without saying that this episode will contain spoilers for Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn trilogy as well as some other books in the Cosmere.
I realized something the other day that kind of gave me a realization.
What?
You realized something that gave you a realization. Continue.
Yeah.
What?
Don't mind my own language.
What?
It was a post I saw online, and it kind of threw me off. All Egyptians, culturally, are furries. Ancient Egyptians.
I'd say that's more accurate of the Aztecs with jaguar and eagle warriors, but okay.
I'd say that's more apt about modern Christians, but that's fine.
But look at all the ancient gods. If ancient people weren't into that, then they're mistaken.
I mean,
Sure.
Who was it? Zeus? Did Zeus turn into a horse and fuck someone?
Yes. So did Loki.
I'd say that
Loki
that's
turned
more
into
apt to the
yeah.
modern.
Yeah. Fairies don't so much worship animals as much as they just become them. Which anyway, but I had a fun side tangent Lord of the Rings joke for you, Matt, which I think you'll appreciate. So there's this warrior going, "I will avenge the death of my brother and seek vengeance out on those." And the elf stands up. "You have my bow." The dwarf stands up. "You have my axe." And then the necromancer stands up. "And you have your brother."
Yeah, I love that one. That's so good. I've heard that one before.
I mean, that's
It's
just a
half
joke.
it's half D&D, half.
It's very
Lord of the
funny.
Rings,
It's very
but
funny.
Yeah.
But back to the furries.
Egyptians.
Is it okay? Ancient mythology. You bring up a good point there. Ancient mythology. Is it bestiality if you turn into an animal and then fuck it?
Yeah.
Yes, it is bestiality, but I would argue that there's a moral difference there because one of the reasons that bestiality is very immoral is that the animal has no way of consenting, whereas if it's a human, becomes an animal.
What if you can communicate with the animal? What
It's
level of
still
intelligence?
I mean,
what
there's
level
also
of intelligence?
an issue about talking about power over a certain
Yeah.
creature because most of the creatures would be smaller than you. If it was a lion, maybe.
What level of intelligence does a beast require for a god to be able to turn into an animal and have sex with it?
But there's a prerequisite
doesn't
there.
make-
They are the god in the form of the animal.
Look, the thing as well, you can dress it up in whatever moral way you want, and it becomes morally better, I guess, the more intelligent the animal gets. But
Don't fuck
the
animals.
simple fact
That
is
is
black and white.
True.
If you're having sexual intercourse with a creature of a different species of yours, then it is classified under that thing.
But you are.
Oh, yeah,
you
well,
become that
that's what
species.
the term bestiality.
Yeah,
You become
exactly,
that species.
exactly.
So you've
Yeah, I know.
You've shapeshifted
That's-
into it.
That's
Shapeshifters.
what
I'm
I'm
just saying. Shapeshifters open a big wardrobe into a
the
sexual world
interesting
that I am
one that I have-
interested in, and I do not know why.
The interesting one that I have thought about that's perplexed me, what if you're a druid, right, and you turn into a bear, and you are a bear, and then you can't have sex with another bear?
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying.
What if
That's
I'm
what
a
I said.
necromancer and I turn into a
Oh.
corpse and then I necromance myself back to life? Yeah, then that's a lich, actually.
Yeah,
I
that's what
swear
a
to
lich
God,
is.
you missed Matt. I swear to God, you said someone turns himself into an animal and then goes and fucks a human, and I was like,
No.
of course that's fucking
No,
bestiality.
of course not. I was talking about you turn into a horse and fucking a horse.
Oh, that's very
the other
different.
horse can't consent.
No, okay.
I would.
What?
I mean, is it bestiality? No, not technically by definition.
So is
but it's not right in any way.
What if? What if?
So
what
okay,
if,
we need
what
an
if-
intelligent horse. So
What if you turn
What
into?
classifies intelligent?
That's. But
No,
what,
I
I've met
have
some
a
dumb
fix.
humans.
Matthew. I have a fix. You turn into an animal during that creature's breeding season, and then you turn into an attractive one of that creature, and then you let someone else make the first move. Done.
I have a better solution.
Even if they make the first move, it's
Don't
still
fuck
bad.
horses. How's that? For
Did
a
you know
solution?
that I think it was President Lincoln has pardoned someone. One of the presidents have pardoned someone for fucking a horse. I'm 90% sure
about
that's
right.
true. I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Speaking of Americans, we're on an American book series today.
Oh, that nice one. That was actually
That was awful. That was. I
That's
mean,
terrible.
Yeah.
you managed to get it.
That was the
through.
point.
I mean,
That was
90%
the
of
point.
books are like written by Americans. Let's be honest.
That's entirely
that's
untrue.
entirely
Your statistics
untrue.
are so wrong.
What's
Just because you only read them.
Just because they're in English.
That's true, actually. Good point.
Do you know how many fucking people there are in India and Asia who don't speak English and still, funnily enough, are capable of writing books, my man?
And reading books.
Yeah, crazy.
I'll take it back.
Writing
how
books
many-
is the more operating thing.
And
here.
also, like,
take it back.
the amount of British authors as well. Like,
British people don't speak English. Canonized by Jude.
That's true. British people don't speak English.
No, I'm fuck off. I'm talking Matt's like ignoring Matt forgetting about the whole like other parts of the world that are different cultures. Just like what?
Oh right, you're arguing for
I was
like-
making a broad statement that's clearly untrue.
That's totally incorrect.
That's clearly untrue. I apologize. I take it back. What are you going
you
to talk
take it
about,
back.
Jude?
Yeah,
What I
you take
don't
it
take
back.
about, I'm into shapeshifters. That's what I don't take back.
Sure, you're into
Everyone's into
shapeshifters.
shapeshifter. They can just turn into a sexier version of themselves and then turn
that's
into a
not
sexier
what
version
I'm-
of that. It's infinite
But
sexy.
that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the possibilities on the edge.
Matt just really wants to have sex with an animal.
No,
okay?
that's
We
not
get
what I
over
want. I want the grey area.
this. Why? Why do you want the grey area?
I want this area. Why not just be normal and be like, hey, turn into a supermodel, let's go at it. It's all good.
Like, that's great. I'd love to do that too. But there's the attract of
Is it?
being able to explore.
Fucking a horse?
No, I said I don't want this. Yeah, I don't want to fuck a horse. I want to
I'm
explore
pretty sure
what's
it's
possible
in the-
with a shapeshifter.
Is it in The Boys where fucking shapeshifter person turns into like a really attractive woman and then gets with a politician and then turns back into a dude midway through?
Yes, and then films them.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And then they
blackmail.
use it to blackmail him. Yeah. Anyway, there are actually
Are we gonna have to
shapeshifters
put
in this
spoilers for
world.
the boys on this episode now?
No.
oh, it's hardly a spoiler.
Yeah, barely.
So, today we are talking about Brandon Sanderson's world, or rather worlds, which kind of sick, if I'm honest. While, as we all know, Lord of the Rings is my favourite IP, some of the stuff in Sanderson's universe honestly is above Lord of the Rings in terms of my level of enjoyment. So
Impossible, Jude. Impossible.
putting it out there. So, what makes it so cool, and what the hell am I talking about today? The aim I'm getting towards discussing is Sanderson's Mistborn series, and the world and magic in it, because it's kind of cool. But
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you remember you mentioning this during the interview episode that we did a few episodes back.
yes, me and
Maybe you
Sam...
should listen to that one as well, just to get a little sample of
The
it.
way
Yeah,
you said
me
that, has
and
Jude
I-
given you like standard questions to ask? Because they got like a script. Have you both got a script in? I'm the only one who didn't get a script.
No, I just want to make people listen to other episodes.
yeah.
Guy, that's not what your script says. Read it again.
Jude, you've got some very interesting things. Please tell me more about this episode.
Happily, guy.
And if you
So to start with...
oh, my script comes in now. Oh, and also you can if you want to know more about magic systems, hard and soft. There's an episode on that.
It was so
But I
good
actually-
it inspired a writer to talk to us.
It's true. It's true. I did talk about Mistborn stuff a little bit in that magic episode. But anyway, so to start with, I'm going to discuss a thing called the Cosmere. So, the Cosmere is Brandon Sanderson's entire universe.
Russian universe.
Yes, it
Welcome
is.
to the Cosmere.
Yes. It is basically his MCU before the MCU was the MCU. This is to say he started releasing books around the early 2000s, and he has been building this huge universe, which all of the books, well, pretty much all of the books he's ever written exist in the same overarching universe. And that universe is called the Cosmere. I'm not going to dive too far into the Cosmere because we had enough of a mindfuck in the Zombies episode last week. But the main thing is, all the books that are set in the Cosmere share a single cosmology and the basic underlying rules of magic, and some characters from one world will make appearances in another world. You get like world hoppers and stuff who are fun dudes. But none of those connections are needed, and Sanderson's constant aim is to make them fully independent stories, with the multi-dimensional characters being more fun extras that you'll be rewarded. Like, if you're a big-time reader that's read all of his series, you'll go, oh shit, it's that dude again, he's popping up in this universe now. But you don't need to know about his other stuff to get the stuff out of the book you're reading, if that makes sense, I guess.
Checks.
Yeah, and on the magic systems, it's more the fundamental underlying rules that are shared. They do appear/act very differently in the different book series. It's just the basic rules are very similarly linked. So, now on to the mythos, or the creation story of the whole universe. So, the Cosmere and the magic within it was created by a being called Adonolcium.
Good. I'm sure that was excellent pronunciation, Jude.
Yep, definitely.
How was it
and
spelled?
was Adonalsium, Adonolcium.
Adonolcium. Okay, cool. Adonolcium.
Yes.
It's like ad nauseum.
Exactly. Sure. I think it's actually taken from some other real world.
Ad nauseum
word,
just
anyway.
means do
Could
whatever.
be a play on the
No,
word.
I meant the
Adam?
Adnol. I think
Could it be
is
a play on the word Adam?
potentially. I think it's.
I'm
taken
just going to
from...
go with ad nauseum. That's fine. I'm going to call them ad nauseum from now on. You've got to deal
I'm
with
gonna
that. I
call
do this
them.
in every
I'm gonna
episode.
call them God.
Sure. Oh yeah, you can call him God. That works.
I'm gonna call him Stinky God.
This was largely an incorporeal being, and this being filled the universe with investiture, which is basically the magic.
Investments. He's invested in the stock
Yeah.
market.
There's a Wall
Yeah.
Street.
He's a Wall Street.
And the different books/worlds/demigods that we're going to talk about, they harness and utilize investiture in a variety of ways, which makes the magic look very different.
Sorry, wait. God, he, they, them, she,
As of yet undisclosed.
them.
They invest.
Yeah.
They invest in different companies to
Wait, a thing
then
that I'm
produce
gonna-
magic through dividends that they
Yeah,
get back.
yeah. Well, I'll talk a little bit about.
Dividendum magic.
Dividend.
I'll talk a little bit about the investiture. So
Is
we've got
cryptocurrency
end.
in this universe.
Sure.
I hope not.
So we've got end positive investiture, which when practicing an end positive investiture, the practitioner draws in power from an external source. The practitioner gains power from this external source, and it's positive in that it adds, in most cases temporarily, power to the person. So most types of magic in the world are end positive because most of the time they're connecting to some external source which is giving them power.
Yeah, you
Does
don't
this
usually want to
universe
go.
follow-
You don't usually want to like give away your power in a time of need. That wouldn't be great.
Well, I mean, but also explosions giving away power. Speaking of, does this world follow laws of thermodynamics? Is there a constant energy level across the universe?
Is there
Yes.
entropy?
Is there
Yes.
entropy? Are we all gonna
Yeah,
die?
well, that is one of the things that is kind of good about Sanderson's worlds, in my opinion. If you read the difference with him and, like, say, Tolkien and Lord of the Rings, and as much as I prefer a lot of things about Tolkien, and there's a lot of parts of Tolkien's world where they're a lot more fleshed out, what there is of Sanderson's world, while it's not as much as Tolkien's, what there is, everything exists for a reason, everything is connected, everything makes sense. You aren't reading through a world-building thing and going, that just kind of doesn't make sense, because everything that you think that, if you read into other parts of his world, it all actually does that.
Stop vaguing about my episode.
What? Oh,
It doesn't contradict itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's well thought out in that way.
I appreciate that.
And yeah, exactly. And then end neutral investiture is the middle one. So for an act to be considered end neutral, power is neither gained nor lost. A practitioner manipulates power that already exists or power that comes from themselves. We'll get to some examples which show how the magic specifically works with these very shortly, but this is just a starting thing. And then you've got end negative investiture, which you can probably put together. Power is lost when you're using end negative investiture.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we'll get to it, and it'll make sense sooner rather than later. I'm just kind of spitballing fast through this entry stuff of the Cosmere because it's just, yeah, you can shitball a little bit more when we get specifically into Mistborn, but
You can shitball. I've heard of spitballing. I've never heard of shitballing.
That is what we do on
Shitballing's
this
more
podcast.
accurate, yeah. So sometime after
verbal
the creation
shitposting.
of So, sometime after the creation of the universe by Adolcium, a group of powerful individuals came together for, at this point, unknown reasons, to overthrow the god. They created a powerful weapon from things called Dawn Shards, which basically are like the god tools that the god used to create everything, and they kind of steal the Dawn Shards, make a big weapon, and destroy him. So, rip.
They kill God.
Yeah. With the split, it caused the event known as the Shattering of Adonolcium, which resulted in the remains of God becoming 16 shards. These shards were then attuned, for for reasons unknown right now, to 16 people from the group that had destroyed God.
Who got to decide who got the shards?
The shards attuned themselves.
It wasn't like a raffle or anything.
Was it like...
No.
Were they random, or they like... Was God's essence kind of chose the people?
It was not random.
And
It
tell me
was-
about the shards and their things
Yeah.
that's in them.
So
Don't one of them have the power of his dick and balls?
Yeah, did each one have like an arm? You got the arm of God.
more spiritual. Like I say, this god was more an incorporeal being than a physical entity. But so these people became known as vessels, and they pretty much became gods themselves, the demigods I mentioned earlier. The thing is, the shards were all attributes. These are, at least all the shards that we know of, because we don't specifically know all 16 just yet, they all kind of take after traits. So we've got odium, which is like massive hatred, basically. I had to look up that word. Then we have honor, cultivation, ruin, preservation, devotion, dominion, endowment, autonomy, ambition, invention, mercy, valor, and whimsy. Now, the thing is... Yes.
Hell yeah.
So those are
I'm
those are
looking
the,
for-
those are the names of the dwarves in the new gritty remake of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Fuck, imagine.
I feel like whimsy is gonna be like this is just me guessing, but oh fuck, who's that guy in Skyrim who just fucks with you?
Oh, the guy at the Brotherhood.
The
Cicero?
magic stick. Cicero. It's gonna be like Cicero.
Yeah, look. Chances, yeah, pretty accurate. Oh, or Sanguinius. Oh, sorry, no, Wabberjack boy.
That's who I was thinking of.
Yeah.
The Wabberjack boy.
Wow, that's really disappointing. Sheergorath.
I was gonna say, Jude
got
can't
it.
remember lore. I'm having to turn to Google.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
disgusting.
Yeah.
We're the keepers of the law. We can't turn to Google.
Yeah. Now the thing is, we don't know a lot about this, this creation story stuff, because Old Brando is currently working on a book series that is set in the whole Shattering event.
Nice.
Which he's writing, but he also keeps putting off, because as soon as he puts it out there, every single answer that people have about his universe will be answered. So he's kind of keeping it very
Everyone will
close to his
stop
chest.
reading his books simultaneously.
He's trying to keep relevant. Poor man.
It's really funny because one of the differences between like him and George R. R. Martin, you'll be like, oh, cool, I'm reading through Game of Thrones. I wonder if he'll release the next one by the time I get to it. Spend like 3 years reading his book somehow. Still hasn't even come close to releasing the next one. Sanderson, if you start reading one of his book series, by the time you get halfway through it, your book series is extended by like 2 books. Like the speed with which he pumps out books is insane. But
Considering the fact that you're talking about him and sounds like it's good quality, that's pretty goddamn
yeah,
good.
yeah,
I know a few authors like that.
it's fucking
You know
terrifying.
them? You gotta get them.
Personally,
No,
knows
I
them.
don't know.
He's shaking hands with them.
Yeah, Phew. He's kissing.
Kissing. Oh
Maybe,
boy.
maybe they're horses.
Maybe they are shapeshifters.
I know some horse authors. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So, authors, Matthew, please respect their titles.
Horse.
That's actually good. There's your one good one for the episode.
And we wasted it 18 minutes
Yeah.
in.
Disgusting.
So these vessels were, as I say, pretty much given god powers. Once again, we do know minimal about the specifics of how this godhood works, but things we do know, they can literally reshape a planet, move a planet's orbit around a sun, change the genetic makeup of an entire species on a planet. So they literally just have fucking god mode enabled. Some limitations that we have seen, if a vessel swears an oath, they cannot break it. That is the one kind of consistent limitation of these vessels. So the people that have got shards, the one limitation we've seen so far.
One of those button things. You press the button, you get god powers, but also no take-backsies.
Yeah,
I mean, if
basically.
they're gods, they'll never have to make vows to anyone.
Apart from all of the other gods, which are constantly not necessarily aligned with them.
Ooh,
So they're
god
limited.
lords.
So okay, if one god said this lock cannot be opened, and another god said I open this lock, will it open?
Yes.
No.
So the first magic
Well-
is powerful.
It depends. If they're... Because this would be more like, it wouldn't, because you've got two gods kind of directly against each other, and when they directly oppose each other, they're evenly matched. So that is
kind of
the...
opens.
You get half of the
little
code.
Sure. But yeah, basically the point is, you've got these... The 16 of them are all 16 equally powerful
They're all
forces.
equal, okay.
They can't overpower the other. So a shard's power... Sorry, wait, no. Rather, it is investiture, so the magic never truly goes away. A shard, so the vessels, the gods, whatever you want to call them, a shard has access to functionally endless supply of it, because they use investiture, the magic, to do all of their stuff.
Really makes you wonder how God died.
Well, he didn't. All they could do was split him down, and now
They just
yeah,
sliced him up like a pizza.
Wait,
they changed him from
they couldn't kill him,
changed
so
his
they
form.
sliced him up.
Apparently so.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Do you guys remember Keys to the Kingdom?
Yeah.
They couldn't kill the
I
will,
was-
so they sliced it up.
Oh man.
Oh,
What a throwback.
dude, I was straight up having Keys to the Kingdom flashbacks, reading about parts of this. But anyway, however, there is a finite amount that a vessel / shard / god can command at any one time. This means that while all the investiture in the universe is assigned to one shard or another, a shard cannot truly command all of it at once, because the magic is all evenly distributed, basically. As such, while powerful, shards are not omniscient, omnipresent, nor omnipotent. They are very human in a god position, because they were 16 humans. Well, potentially humans. We don't know for sure if they were human, but 16 individuals that gained god power, so they're kind of limited in that regard. So a shard's power can be temporarily diminished, either by giving it to a living creature or sending it back to the spiritual realm. Moreover, shards are, as powers, bound to follow higher rules. A deal once made cannot be broken, and they must absolutely obey the rules that govern them. Breaking such deals will leave holes in them that another shard can exploit to kill them.
How
You
many
can
times does that
kill a
happen?
shard. Well, we'll get to that. Quite a few times.
Because they're dumb as shit.
Are there like
'cause they're
16 of them?
humans.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Well, think about it this way: when you've got a whole bunch of really intense traits and emotions, some are stronger than others. So, for example, odium, which is just pure fucking hatred. What do you think is going to happen to some of the other ones that are anyway? He goes on a bit of a hatred spree, but
Two
yeah.
questions very quickly.
Shouldn't let
One,
anger-
if a shard is killed, do the other shards gain power?
Not necessarily.
Cool, fine. Pass that on. We'll explain
Mm-hmm.
it later. 2, can a shard give away their power to another person, considering they're a human being possession of a god's part?
Yes.
Excellent. Cool.
So a shard can transfer to someone else. Strictly speaking, we've only really seen it happen in books when the previous vessel dies and then someone else takes up the power of that shard. But there's also no reason, specifically as of yet, to say that a shard can't just choose to retire and give it to someone else.
Not that any shard would particularly want to do that, because
Pretty much, yeah. Were you about to say a question, Matt? I heard an
I was about
I
to
mean,
say-
he makes that noise often.
that is true.
does.
I was gonna say you shouldn't let hatred take over your life like that. It's just unhealthy.
No,
shit,
you
you-
shouldn't.
unhealthy.
You shouldn't.
You have the
real-
hatred of an omniscient
That's real
being.
unhealthy, man. I mean, if you're gonna pick any sort of like thing, everyone's picked like valor and courage. Just go.
They didn't pick shit, dude.
They should.
Listen to the law.
Did they pick it?
That's
Or
what
There
we're here
was-
for.
Did they pick it?
They didn't
one-
pick it. It got associated to them.
They did, while it got
it's gotta be
it seemed random, but it was very deliberate, chosen by the shards themselves. They chose their vessel. The people did have the option to turn down getting this power, and there was one person who did turn down a shard.
Respect.
And yeah, he's a random dude named Hoyd, and he fucking appears in every single one of Sanderson's books as just a random side character, and it's just a fun little Easter egg for all of his readers. They're like, oh shit, it's Hoyd doing shit again.
It's probably like, when authors put themselves in the book.
It's a little, it's a little bit of that. He doesn't...
Does he have cooler powers, or was it just like, nah, and he kept on living like a normal life?
He did gain some of the power, and he's immortal and can hop between realities, so he's pretty fucking
got
powerful.
touched.
Yeah,
He's
just a little bit.
Yeah.
These kind of remind me of like the lantern rings, in DC.
Yeah, I
So
get
each one is like associated with an emotion on the emotional spectrum, and like there's like fear, willpower, like love, anger, they're like
Stupid.
That's Guy's ring. He's coming.
That's my
It's
ring,
honestly, it's already arrived. Here's the embodiment of stupid.
And the other thing, like I was saying there, shards, they will become weaker if they choose to assign their power to a living creature, but they can do that if they need a living creature to do a particularly big thing. Because their ability to interact on the physical realm is a bit limited. They can do some huge things, but if they, say they want to specifically make one particular person die, sure, they could make some of the shards have the power to just be like, that person needs to die for my grand plan. I guess a volcano erupts underneath their city, but they may not want to destroy that entire fucking city and everyone else in it, so they'll just give their power to one particular person and then get them to kill the person.
So
They're a brute force weapon. They don't have any precision.
yeah,
they've got precision, but their precision is sending their power into someone and then making that person.
So how does
it?
they can't react with the physical world? Does that mean there's like a spiritual world they exist in?
Yeah, I did think about talking. I'll say there's kind of 3 levels. So there's the physical world, there's the cognitive world, and there's the spiritual world in Sanderson's whole Cosmere. It's a bit complicated, and they're not really relevant to the Mistborn stuff. So I wasn't gonna. Yeah, I won't talk about them too much. But the main, I suppose, kind of thing is. Cognitive realm is... So physical is pretty self-explanatory. Cognitive is kind of the interaction between the spiritual realm and the physical realm, where like cognitive spirits can be, but they aren't necessarily seen by people in the physical realm. They can see. And a lot of people go to the cognitive realm for a short period of time after they die, and then they pass into the beyond, whatever the fuck that is. And that's one thing that Sanderson has not done yet, is flesh out his afterlife, because I think he just doesn't want to. But I think that's cool, because it leaves a little bit of mystery.
It's a big pool.
Yeah,
yeah.
Big swimming pool.
I think the big question of what happens after you die is it's a question we have in our lives. So I don't think a lot of authors leave it.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Big pool full of ducks.
Big pool full of ducks.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Become a duck. What worries do ducks have? Think about a duck. You take a duck from the year 1700 to current year. What issues are they going to have? It's going to be more easy access to bread.
Some ducks are facing extinction around the globe.
Tough shit. I take the duck. The duck is here. Duck doesn't care. Duck doesn't have a brain good enough to do that. And also, ethereal duck, afterlife duck, gonna swim around a big pond, full of bread, full of other ducks. No extinction issues there.
Okay.
So anyway,
I'm sorted. I have no existential crisis. I had existential crisis in year 2. I decided on that as my religion. Gave up. That's it. I'm done.
Fair enough. What was I gonna ask? I was gonna ask something. They can make an earthquake, a volcano happen. You said so. That's nature kind of powers. Well, what's stopping them from just stopping someone's heart? In that sense, that's still natural in a way.
Yeah, it's more... They can't really physically do a thing to a particular person. It's more the world.
So can they stop, like, their building they're in collapsing? Can they just make it collapse? Or is it more nature powers? Or is it more ambiguous than that?
It's... Yeah, like I say, a lot of this stuff is set to be answered, most likely, in the next book series, which, I'll continue.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. So each shard appears particularly predisposed toward acting in line with their intent. For example, Preservation finds it nearly impossible to destroy, while it's extremely easy for Ruin to do so, but Ruin can't stop destroying. pretty self-explanatory in that regard. This is partially influenced by their personality change brought about by the shard. However, whether intentions provide shards with actual unique powers is yet unknown. So we don't know for sure if, because Ruin is Ruin, he has different powers to what Preservation may have, but we do know that because of the personality change brought on by Ruin, the person that has Ruin is more likely to do destruction.
Interesting.
Quick thing. With the power given to human thing, I'm going to make an assumption here and, I don't suppose... I assume that every person who gets the powers from the shard uses them responsibly to do exactly what the shard wants them to, correct?
Responsibly, no. Does it end up being exactly what the shard wanted them to do, and in the end, most of the time?
That's fair. I was honestly expecting you to go like, aha, we'll get to it, but no.
Yeah. So the shift in one's mentality to fall in line with their shard is very gradual but forceful. When we see a character become a vessel at a point in the book, it is, subtle, but you start to see them gradually lose themselves and become their intention. Basically, a Dulcium wins because everyone slowly becomes his pawn.
So it's very much like it corrupts. It's kind of like the One Ring, and it's kind of like the keys and keys to the kingdom. I'm gonna keep bringing it back.
But it's an interesting thing with the term corrupt, though, because in this sense, it wouldn't be corrupt in the usual sense, like the One Ring, where it just makes you like obsessive over it and sort of spooky. Like some of these people are like good attributes, quote unquote.
I mean,
like honor, for example, is
honor,
they just make
honor
the person
for
gradually more
I
and
think
more
any
honorable.
attribute to any extreme, which these seem to be, can be bad. I think.
Yes,
100%,
correct, but
100%.
then again, I would rather be in a room with someone who's extremely preservacious rather than someone who's extremely ruinous.
I mean, extreme preservation is keeping you trapped in a time as time frozen.
That's
but I'm
literally
not
my line.
exploded.
Shut up. So anyway, we'll move on to the Mistborn specific stuff and set aside the whole Cosmere connected universe. So the entire Mistborn is based around the result of two shards: Preservation and Ruin.
Hey!
So entropy.
These two shards, so these two shards, unlike some of the others, directly oppose each other and are polar opposites. For to ruin, you break Preservation, and to preserve is to never cause ruin. So we'll talk a bit about Preservation. AKA the person who became Preservation was a man named Laris. Laris is a short man with black hair and a prominent nose. In the cognitive realm, he appears wearing a thin wool coat that reaches almost to his feet, as well as a laced tunic. And a tied belt holding a knife with a handle of bone.
Is that Preservation or Ruin?
This is Preservation.
How old is he?
Okay, cool.
Once he's become Preservation, he's kind of an immortal being.
How old do you look?
I'm imagining
Younger.
like a nice old man.
Younger than immortal.
Yeah. I'll ignore that. Yeah.
He doesn't look like Red Skull.
Yeah.
Or that Greek
myth.
myth about the guy turning into a grape.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, there's a guy who they wished for. Eos, lover wished for eternal life to Zeus, but she didn't wish for eternal youth for a lover, and he kept aging until he became the size of a grape after 1,000 years or something like that.
I mean, that's pretty fucked up and cool. I'd pay like $10 to go to a freak show and see a grape-sized man.
Fuck. So
When
when
one of those hand
appearing,
catapults.
when appearing in the physical realm, Laris takes the form of a mist spirit, a silhouette outlined in Scadrial, which is the world we'll get onto, omnipresent mists. So though roughly humanoid, he is difficult to distinguish from the mist when he's just a spirit in it, at least until he starts moving. He cannot speak in this form, but he can move around and point, as well as interact with objects in a very limited capacity. So, like, he wouldn't be able to shut a door on someone's face, but he might be able to make a door in the physical realm kind of slightly jitter.
Nice.
Okay, interesting.
So, Laris is a vessel of a shard. As such, he is unaging, nigh omnipresent. Nigh is very important.
Nye. Doing a lot of work there, Nye.
Within his sphere of influence and lacking a form in the physical realm. His actual body is stored somewhere else and reappears. If he were to die, his body would flop down onto the physical realm, basically. He is... Yep. He is, however, dead and has been for centuries, if not millennia. As
So
such,
his body
he is
has flopped.
slowly... Not quite. He is slowly unraveling. He lacks significant so he's slowly losing bits of memory and has trouble focusing, and only remains lucid for short periods of time.
So his power's keeping him alive.
It's more, he did a thing, which we'll get onto, that's resulted in his death, but it's a slow and gradual
Okay,
death.
you can't just
It's
drop.
the death of
You
a
can't just
god.
stop. He died, and then but he's still going.
You know what I?
And he died, but I lived!
This is an Ice Age 3.
Maybe it is.
It is. Maybe it is. I do also appreciate the pure number of Chekhov's guns we managed to leave throughout the scripts that we write for these episodes. If you don't know what Chekhov gun is, Matt.
Yeah,
You're
of
gonna be
course,
confused.
of course.
So Chekhov gun for the listener is when someone introduces something in a script. It usually, if it's a well-written script and it's a not insignificant thing, it will be paid off. So if someone, shows that they can jump over really big puddles at the start of a movie that seems sort of like a passing thing, then by the end of the thing, they're going to have to jump over a puddle to save someone.
The long and short, if there's a gun on top of the fireplace in Act 1, it's going to fire in Act 3.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
So the amount of times that I hear something into the script where it's just like, and this thing happened, and then we move on. It's like,
Honestly,
I fucking
you know,
heard that.
honestly, I struggle to write scripts that explain things in an order that doesn't present Chekhov guns. Like, I was trying to write a script, and I'm like, well, this thing, I'm going to have to come back to that later, because we can't go on a tangent right now talking about
I
that.
always signpost my Chekhov's guns because one of my biggest things that I say on this is, we'll come back to it.
Yeah,
I'll get to
yeah,
it.
exactly. Like, it's a kind of thing where you have to mention something that you're going to, like, I can't explain this fully right now, but we'll come into it later in the episode.
Mistborn, tell us about the unraveling.
So, as the Vessel of Preservation, Leris has some of the better future sight in the Cosmere. He is able to accurately predict events for a couple thousand of years ahead. Even
Just a
with
couple thousand
interference-
years? Oh.
Even with interference from Ruin. This allows him to make long-term, large-scale plans and trust them
And
to work
investments.
out. Yes,
He can make
and
good
trust them
investment
to work out
on the
properly.
stock market.
Even if he himself forgets the plan, what the plan was in the first place, because he is literally dying.
So he's the living embodiment of a butterfly effect.
Yeah, basically.
Ah,
The form he takes in the cognitive realm carries a knife on it with the bone handle, so, as I mentioned, the little knife, and he refers to it as his old friend, and his first instinct when threatened is to reach for it, suggesting he was once at least moderately capable with it. However, in the present times, he finds it very difficult to actually harm someone, because
He's a god.
He's preservation.
I mean, but when would he have gotten... Okay, previous to getting the shard, perhaps.
Yeah,
Right,
because
cool,
he
gotcha.
was a champion of some sort of realm that went and fought a god with a bunch of other champions, and
Makes
then
sense.
over literal millennia has become this omnipresent being of preservation.
I just heard preservation has a knife. I'm like,
yeah. And the kind of the thing about
I'm going to keep you preserved by cutting you open.
kind of the thing with preservation. I'll get the exact quote up because it's just sort of sums up the way that.
Think about it. If the meat, if a pig's too big, you cut up to slices so it can fit in the fridge, so you can freeze it to preserve it.
Yeah.
but then
Just
you're
like
losing
that.
the preservation of the life. So why would you not just put it in the backyard rather than put it in the fridge?
It's already dead at this point. I'm saying if you're hunting.
Okay, fair.
But like, I know it's a bad example, but like, you gotta preserve.
yeah, it's a fucking.
Sometimes, if the situation's gone to shit, you need to use a knife to preserve something.
I mean, if I was a god, I'd just use like a bunch of.
If
ammo,
someone's
but it's
dying,
fine.
they use
the
a knife
quote-
to
a
cut open the
quote-
heart to preserve the heart.
a quote that really sums up preservation well, and why preservation is seen as a good guy, and for a lot of parts, well, when preservation is discovered in the books, which we'll get to it, but it's kind of a thing that a lot of knowledge is forgotten throughout the books and, well, not known, so you only kind of really get to know about preservation and ruin in, like, the third book of the trilogy. So they aren't, like, gods that have been known about for the whole time. But when, it's initially thought, oh, this preservation's the good guy, he's the one trying to protect the world, and it's like, well, not necessarily. And the quote is, if he had his way, you'd all be frozen in time, unable to act, lest you harm one another. So,
Checks out.
That's what I'm
like, yeah, that's kind of what Matt was saying before, and I was being like, "It's my fucking line." It is quite literally to the extreme. So just because it's about preservation and keeping life alive doesn't necessarily mean it's good.
That's what I'm saying. Like, anything to the extremes is bad, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, but then I could argue perhaps that by doing that sort of preservation, you would be eliminating and ruining my free will.
Exactly. It's like the difference between having how many laws do you want to protect you to how much do you want of freedom do you
Now
want.
we're getting political. Let's go back to Mistborn.
Exactly. So moving on to Ruin. Little is known about... So the person that became Ruin is someone named Atty. And little is known about Atty's appearance. He has flame red hair and a welcoming, friendly smile.
Oh, hell yeah, he does.
When taking on human form, he wears a robe and has shadows moving beneath his skin, akin to spines or spider's legs. They push against his form, making it pucker outwards erratically. How intense this effect is varies. It's sometimes less pronounced and sometimes more.
He
so his
sounds-
skin
I
kind
thought
of...
he was going to have cool tattoos going around.
He sounds
No, I
so
don't.
fucking cool.
He's
Yeah,
very-
he is.
He's very edgy. I liked him
We get-
until that. I hate that. Spider's legs?
That's cool as.
We,
It's like
well,
he's like a built-in massage chair. You hug him and he
I
does.
prefer the old man. Give me the old man back.
So, as a mortal, Atty was known for being kind and generous. After taking up Ruin, he fought against the destructive impulses it brought about for many years. Over time, however, Ruin won out and adapted his kindness to its own intent.
Well, no fucking shit.
Why did it pick him? Why did it pick him if he wasn't naturally adapted?
maybe
to
maybe it knew he was strong.
Maybe
you know?
it wanted... Yeah. It's...
I mean, it's that quote from Doctor Who: "When a good man goes to war, you know, whatever the fuck the end
It's
of that quote
bad.
is."
Yeah.
Bad
Bad things happen. Oh, gee.
Oh, gee willikers.
When a good man goes to a war, bad things happen. Quote. Doctor Who.
Or something, I don't
When
know.
a,
there's
when
a-
a good
there's
man
a
goes to
quote-
war, whoops.
There's a quote that a good man needs no rules. That don't be the reason why I have to explain why I have so many or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so
Doctor Who
presently...
can we misquote?
Yeah. So presently, Atty wants to see the destruction of everything in existence. He believes that all life must end eventually, and to force it to carry onward past its expiration date is cruel. In his opinion, the destruction he causes serves a creative purpose.
I was literally
Without
thinking
death,
that,
there
yeah.
can be no further life. At the same time, Atty is prideful and boastful. He seems to revel in mocking those he has defeated, and will appear in front of his victims to gloat about his victory.
sounds like a
that's
dickhead.
that's less kind.
Yeah.
I was thinking like you bend like the kindness to make ruin. You bend like I'm putting you out of your misery. You're just miserable beings living miserable
what
lives.
I see, and
that
obviously
cruel
we
sounds a
won't
bit
know, but what I see is that he was a very kind of proud, charismatic, almost Captain America-like leader to some of the other vessels before they went and fought the big god, and then that kind of charismatic nature got corrupted into gloating and boastful. But who knows? I'm happy to be disproved.
bit-
So Atty
got the short
is
end
a
of the
It means you'll
shard.
get your book that you want.
He got the short end of the stick there. Rip.
Yeah. So Atty is one of the shards, making him one of the most powerful entities in the universe. Like the others, he is immortal, unaging, and incorporeal. He fuels the magics of metallurgy, which we'll get into. And thanks to being heavily invested in the world that him and Preservation create, Scadrial, he can alter any text other than what is written in metal, changing it to suit his needs. This is a really key thing to remember for later. He
Why?
can change any written text.
Why?
It's a very specific power.
It's really specific, and the details behind what he can't. Like, okay, fine, you can't change metal. He can change writing in diamond. What?
Well, metal's associated with magic in this world, so I think that's why.
Yeah.
But like,
Stinky.
if you remember from the other episodes, Guy,
I don't pay attention to these episodes. I go into a fugue state and just quit.
that's true.
Yeah.
But like, that's really interesting. Like, if you sent a message to like someone, he could change it. He could change the message.
Yep.
So like, you
Yep.
said, "Oh, you look so great today." He could say it so.
My dearest miss-
you look so.
My dearest lady, you look so fine today. Fuck you.
Wow, he did.
Yeah.
He really ruined my relationship.
Yeah, straight up.
I don't get it.
He's
He
the
can-
ruin guy.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he can do that, and
He's
like
really
it becomes,
petty.
it becomes a bit of a until they realize that they're fighting a god that can change text. It becomes a serious issue where they'll be trying to fight things, and they'll be trying to send a message from... Because go figure, it's medieval. They're trying to send, like, a courier with a letter with important military details from one side of the kingdom to the other, and then it'll arrive, and it's just... Because he can't change much, but he can change keywords just to be, like... I don't know, for example... Send men, he can change it to
Send babies.
keep men here, you know.
All good.
Send babies.
No worries, bro.
Yeah, precisely. So then it's like, oh, okay, the king doesn't need our reinforcements. I guess we'll stay here then.
Yeah.
King send me a
it'd be
message
so
that says, I'm definitely alive.
It'd be so annoying to have to bend everything into metal to send a message.
Yeah, they have to make like these metal sheets and then scratch into it. It's,
Oh
yeah.
shit, I made a spelling mistake. Fuck.
Imagine being the courier who hears about that the day after they make that policy change. All right, so you know those sheets of paper you're taking? Nah, metal now. It's like, oh, fuck.
It's more, they kind of use like what could be equated to like aluminium foil to an extent, and then kind of scratch into
They're a
that,
lot smarter
but-
than us. I'm thinking of like a thick metal band.
I was thinking about literally like getting soldiers' armor who've fallen and just being like,
For like three
Yeah,
messages on it, like 3 words are like this big.
actually, that'd work. Get like a chess piece and scratch it into there and then put it on the courier.
Yeah, no, that is 100% things. to
Hell
do with.
yeah.
So apart from his supernatural abilities, Atty is proven to be adept at deception when he wishes to be. His alterations are subtle enough to trick the unaware into thinking they are still reading the original text. When appearing in person, he can easily play a role of another. Most notably, he was speaking to a particular key character in the book in the voice of their brother, who was dead at the time, for their entire lives, so subtly in the back of their mind that it was simply dismissed as internal thoughts. Ooh. You know, like when you hear the warning voice in the back of your mind that this character just associated to being this person, it was actually this god subtly playing her for her entire life.
Damn. Do you guys hear an internal thought? I don't hear
Yeah.
anyone speaking to me in my mind.
I can hear my own voice when I think about things in my head.
Yeah.
I guess I can.
Exactly.
I guess it's a. I don't know. Count that's a hearing.
You don't hear it. It's like you're
It's
not
more
hearing
just
anything
thoughts.
through your ears.
Like
but you
yeah.
can...
I swear, characters in books hear so much shit in their head. I'm like, you're fucked. Like,
It's just a thought. It's not necessarily a voice, but yeah, that could be this entity putting those thoughts in
when
your
you're
mind,
fighting
basically.
creatures that powerful, that's insane. Like,
Yeah. So taking it a step further, he can physically manifest in front of someone in any shape he wants. Despite his destructive tendencies, he is able to take on the role of someone being very kind, should he wish to, like when he physically takes form, which is one of the differences between him and preservation. Preservation can, likely because of the slowly decreasing strength of preservation as it's dying, that can only really take the form of like a mist spirit in the world, whereas Ruin can literally just take the form of a person if he wishes to. So magic. Talk a little bit about the magic of Mistborn.
Let's go.
Yes, so the uniqueness of the investiture that settles within this world and with Ruin and Preservation is that it is all based around metal, and metal being the key that unlocks and fuels these special powers. The thing with these powers is they are all very like hard soft magic system in their own right. You can use a specific metal to gain usage of a specific power. All magic system are based around 16 metals. It's fucking 16 again.
Yeah, nice.
16 is an important number.
16
in this
is
universe.
constantly... Yeah, 16 is an important
I
number
mean,
in this
there
universe.
are a bunch of different numbers that people seem to settle on very happily. Like 7's good for a lot of big magic items. 3's good for a number of bosses and a number of hits on the bosses.
Seven is largely seen in our world as the holy number in Christian mythology and Judah, but like it's also like in pagan, it's also seen as the number of magic. 7.
I just think that it's interesting that for the most part, apart from like 2 and 4, because a duo and having 4 people's a normal thing.
It's good for
Like beyond
multiplayer
that,
games.
most of like the numbers that you see that show up repeatedly, 5, 7, 13, 15, etc., like odd. I don't know if there's a
I
thing
think
for that.
odd. Like, whenever things something odd, it doesn't work with a lot of anything else. So I think people see that as magical or unique.
In my head, I'm lining it up, and it looks like if you put it as like a shape, like pentagon, it's got like that top peak, or like a star. It's got like that top. It has one at the top, whereas even you end up with that.
Yeah.
I might just be making bullshit up.
I mean, you can also just rotate it even so there's one at the bottom.
Yeah, but then you got one at the bottom as well.
Yeah, you got some dungy man at the bottom.
So we'll dive into the first magic system. So the first one is Allomancy. Allomancy is the magic system that is full preservation. So there's three. There's one that's full preservation, one that's kind of 50-50 preservation and ruin, and then one that is full ruin. So at the time of the Mistborn series, Allomancy is the most common investiture in the world. Allomancy is, in essence, the process of ingesting, usually in the form of metal flakes suspended in an alcoholic solution, any of the 16 metals and using or burning that metal internally to gain its power.
I can get
While
behind
in
this.
the world, yeah, it's not like alcohol. It's just like a you know, if
Preservation
you were to use,
solution.
I can no
Yeah,
longer get
yeah.
behind this.
It's just, yeah. Yeah. So while in the world it is seen as the metal itself giving power, this is, of course, wrong. Metal is just metal. The metal instead acts as a key to the investiture of preservation. If you remember, I was saying how the shards can give power to people. When someone burns metal, they're actually opening themselves up to receive a little bit of preservation's power.
Wait, so when people use enough of the metal power, is preservation gonna like...
If someone were a powerful enough Allomancer, preservation would start to get weaker, yes.
Wait.
Because they're drawing off his power, so if enough people use his power, if there's a powerful enough suck on his power, then he...
Fair enough. That's very well explained.
So this unlocks the magic for a short period of time while burning the metal. The people that use it can be split into two groups. The first is a misting. A misting means that due to your inherited genes, you have the ability to allomantically burn a single metal. For example, someone might have the ability to burn only tin, which greatly enhances one's senses, but if they were to ingest any other type of metal, nothing would happen. And then...
Wait, are they born with that? Is that like you're born with that sort of thing ability?
Yeah, so they're just... It's passed down, like, dominant recessive gene.
Ever
that kind of
explained
thing.
how that, like...
How's that
when
work?
that started?
Did some weirdo
yeah.
start eating metal back in the day?
No, what I'm thinking of is it's like a smaller version of the shards, where it's like he decided, like, these are the 16 metals, here are the 16 families I'm going to give that to, and then over hundreds of years it spreads itself.
Sort of. It would have been the world population, because of a reason that I'll get onto in, like, literally a paragraph.
Okay.
The entire world would have existed, and then specifically 16% of the population would have been Allomancers.
Huh, nice.
Okay, can I just...
No.
Okay, nice. There are multiple planets in this universe, or is there one world? Because I was guessing...
There's... In the whole universe, there's shitloads of worlds, because the different novels of Sanderson
what I
take place
thought.
on very
That's what
different
I
worlds.
thought.
But this one that we're focusing on today is just one world.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
Come on,
Yeah,
we're in the
yeah.
ACU.
Yeah. So the CCU, the Allomancers are just sort of limited in that regard. They get one metal. They can use it to do a thing. I'll talk a little bit about that shortly, but I won't dive into it too much because it would be too much. But the second group is called a savant. A savant is someone who has allomantically burnt and flared a metal for so long that it has drastically changed the physiology of their body.
Nice.
This is almost always a bad thing. Basically like becoming dependent on a particular drug to function. But it comes with some minor benefits in the right setting. One example of this, we see a character in the book series who becomes overly dependent on burning tin, which tin lets someone greatly increase their senses, which leads to him becoming a tin savant. While this means he is a literal god of hearing, and if he focuses, he can hear like a hushed conversation in a kitchen of a house 2 doors down. It also means that he literally can't open his eyes outside during the day without a blindfold because the sun would just burn too much.
Yeah,
That checks.
you'd hear everything. That'd be horrible.
Yeah, and a really loud bang near his head would literally paralyze him. Like if someone
Right
went
outside
up
my
and...
bedroom.
Yeah, you would hear that.
Yeah, it's
Like-
like it's that kind of thing where it's like it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, exactly. Like, he becomes a literal fucking sentry god, but if someone walked up to him and went clap next to his ears, it would literally paralyze him. Yeah,
It
straight up,
reminds me of
straight
like
up.
some telepaths in like comics where before they know how to turn it off, they like hear everyone's voices. in their
Yeah,
head
it
all
is.
at
No,
once.
it's literally when you see a character first getting into their allomancy in the book, and they use tin. it's like overwhelming because they're just standing like on a night street and suddenly they hear like a conversation of some beggars they couldn't see. They hear like a fucking cat that they couldn't. There's just so much. It's like sensory overload, which they have to learn to control.
I'm terrified enough where I'm sitting in bed and I can hear the creaking and banging of my house, and I'm like,
Yeah,
but like if I could
hearing that on light times 10.
yeah, fuck that, man.
Yeah.
Fuck that noise.
So the drawback with Allomancy is, because as I was saying, it is an end positive, no power is lost and they gain power from external source. It is given to them by preservation. The drawback with Allomancy is many people go their whole life without realizing they are a misting. To realize their power, they need to go through snapping. Snapping is when someone goes through an incredibly traumatic or near-death experience that emotionally or physically breaks their body. This brings out their inner potential as a misting. And it becomes commonplace, like at some point, it becomes commonplace for some families to, like, brutally beat children within an inch of their life to try and force a snap if they believe that they might be an Almancer.
Yeah, this is one thing that I don't like about a lot of fantasy things. Media. I was gonna say media.
Right, I thought you said meat.
Media, and like
It's just better when it's beef.
I just.
Sorry, that
was
really
horrible. I don't like glorifying like mental trauma and stuff like that. Whereas you get, oh wow, this person went through trauma, so now they have magic. Like I know it kind of like stands like.
I mean, I'll point also at the Halo books. The Halo books start off with Master Chief and a bunch of other children being experimented on and like castrated and stuff. It's fucked up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it is about authors and just fucking up children.
But like, yeah, no, but like that is one thing where I think it leads like that's something that would happen in in a realistic universe. Yet you would have people just abusing people because if a magic came from emotion, if you unlock magic from emotional abuse and stuff like that.
I wouldn't say it glorifies it. If anything, this book shuns it.
Yeah, well,
but
in this case, I think the trope glorifies.
Yeah,
This might, like, I don't know how it's written, but it might be a smart
It's also,
reflection
while
of
it
it.
might not be. It might
It's
not be
kind
glorifying
of-
it for us. It might be glorifying it for certain types of people. Anyway, yeah.
It's like the whole, especially like when it gets into the like particular nobles beating their children to try and make them snap. It is like literally given as one of the reasons why you should hate these characters in the books. So, like I
Entirely
say,
fair.
it is literally the
yeah.
opposite of. But anyway, we'll move on to. I'll just spitball real quick through the 16 medals and the power that they have.
Oh hell yeah.
My loose plan is to really quickly shoot over these guys, and then if I get to the end of the world stuff and I have time, I'll talk a little bit more about the magic systems because they're quite fun. But
Very quickly, also at the end of you listing the medals, I want Matt and me to pick one. This
yeah,
is
I was going to
Also,
ask that.
Guy,
Good.
I only have 10 fingers. I'm going to need you to help me count. So we're going to start at 0. You're when I get to 10.
I'm only going to do 14 because there's 2 that I want to leave out for now.
Oh, there's a surprise for later. Chekhov's
Yeah.
gun. We're going to get back to them.
So,
we have 4 things to do, Guy.
Every medal, so there's 16, and there are 4 groups of 4 in the 16. But every medal can be pulled. Basically, every medal comes in a pairing. So a pushing and a pulling. So we'll start with the physical medals. These are the ones that let you interact with the world around you. So so that you've got pushing and pulling, and then you've got external and internal. So the physical ones, there's 4 of them. We'll start with the 2 external, external physical medals. The pushing one is called steel. It lets you push your body weight against nearby metal. So weight becomes a really big factor. For example, if you're someone that's trying to push, I don't know, a fucking freight train, you're going to go flying at like 50 kilometers an hour the other way and slam into a wall. But if you're trying to push a tiny coin, the coin's going to fly off at like fucking breakneck speed away from you.
So it obeys Newton's laws of equal opposite reactions. Interesting.
Yeah. All of them aim to do that. For everything you do, there is a consequence. Then the external pulling medal is iron, which lets you pull on nearby metals. So much in the same way body weight becomes a thing. If you try to pull on a freight train, you can use it to move yourself towards it. But if you try to pull on like I don't know, let's say you see a metal object that you think is connected to a table, but it's not. You try to pull on it, clonk, you've knocked yourself unconscious, you know?
So if you have like a fixed metal object, you can use that to like Spider-Man around.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
so fucking cool.
Yeah, so like the most like coolest thing that some people can do with steel, for example, pushing and stuff, they can kind of almost fly with it, because if there's enough metal anchors on the ground, they can push themselves up, and slowly let themselves down.
I was just thinking about like a fucking catapult where I have two
Yeah.
bits of metal like equal apart from me. I attract to both of them and just fucking slingshot between them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeet.
So then we'll move on to the internal physical metals.
Mistborn
So-
space program.
I mean, yeah, you'd be surprised. So pewter is the internal pushing metal. This increases physical abilities, so it makes you stronger, more endurance, increases your pain tolerance by a shitload. It just makes your body overall stronger. So, like, for example, if someone that's burning pewter gets stabbed through the gut, they won't necessarily die. If they can keep their pewter burning long enough to recover from the wound a bit, they won't die. But if they get stabbed through the gut and then their pewter runs out, they're going to die.
Do they have like? So it's a increased healing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Also, is going for the stomach to try and get metals out a common thing?
Not particularly.
That would
Disgusting.
be
How
really
dare
interesting.
you.
Just pull their stomach out.
Can't burn pewter if you got nothing to burn it in, bitch.
Quick thing, just before you guys try to think about too much, with steel and iron, the pushing and pulling on metals, you cannot interact with a metal that is piercing another person. So any creature that the metal is piercing, you lose the ability to play on it. So if someone's got an earring, you couldn't pull the earring out.
What are the limitations of that?
Can I interact with a metal object until it pierces a person?
Yeah.
But a
Cool,
piercing,
I'm gonna send a sword at someone at Mach 10.
Yeah, exactly.
but a piercing. There's an insertion made. There's a hole made in the ear, and then you put the earring in that hole. It's not actually.
Do I have to
piercing.
be touching it?
Like if you think about if I hold a metal bar, can you pull that metal bar in my hand?
What counts as being inside me,
Yeah.
Jude?
It is like the actual piercing part, yeah.
But the piercing's not actually.
So because I think what Matt's talking about is the fact that once you have an earring, it like heals over on the inside, so it's
Yeah.
not technically piercing you.
It's not going through the skin.
Yeah. Just accept.
Okay, got it.
Look,
it's magic.
I could justify it, but
We need
I'd
to
rather
get
spend
this man to write
I'd
a
rather
book
spend
where
the
it's
time.
just. I would. What I want is a book which is just a series of lab notes where they just test.
Yeah,
try
That'd
to
be
figure
so
out what it
interesting.
takes. That's why I read the SCP logs.
This would be that would only work for like something like this where he sat down and thought, how can I exploit this as much as possible after giving these powers, which is so good. I love it.
Yeah. Which, that is one of the things you will see if you ever do read one of Sanderson's books. He does constantly sit down and think, how can I abuse my own magic system in dumb
That's
ways?
very good.
Great.
Also, concerned if the pewter makes you cooler and better, what the fuck's the other one going to do to
So
make you
the
shittier?
pulling one, these are the only two, and it's constantly... I'm gonna leave out a little bit, but these ones, they're the only two that don't quite rely on the pushing and pulling. But
Okay.
pewter enhances yourself, and then tin is the pulling internal metal, and that's the one that like lets you have better senses and see your surroundings.
So enhances your physicality versus enhances your senses. Okay.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fine.
Okay.
And
Just
because
give it, it's fine.
I'm giving
only
it its
with
magic.
these ones, you may remember ages ago in the Magic episode, I talked a little bit about these guys, because all the Allomancers at the time of Mistborn that we see, it's very much through the eyes of thieving crews and stuff. So all of them have got really fucking cool nicknames. So the steel, so pushing, are called coin shots.
Ooh,
Nice.
The iron people that can pull are called lurchers.
Nice.
Not as cool.
Pewter people have kind of got two names. They're either called pewter arms or thugs.
Peter Arm's cool.
Yeah, tin eyes. Tin is tin eyes. Then we'll move on to my favorite one.
I'm just imagining
the
someone
mental.
with tin. Just put some tins like just over their eyes as
Yeah.
glasses. Just, I'm tin eyes.
So the next group is the mental metals, and these are my fucking favorite ones. And so we'll start with the external ones, so the ones that let you affect other people. We have zinc. Zinc people that burn zinc are called rioters. They inflame or riot emotions.
Interesting.
Which is cool. So if you've got someone that is... It's a very key thing with all of the mental metals. It is not mind control. You can do a lot of things that resemble mind control, but it is not mind control. You can't plant an idea. You can't start someone's emotion. But if they're already feeling an emotion, you can enhance it or change it.
It's enhanced.
damn.
It's enhanced
So-
emotions. Interesting.
I was gonna say that it's like Marge in the PlayStation 2 Simpsons game, but that's not quite right because she just can pull people off the side of the road with her megaphone.
Exactly. So, for example, the best like rioters, and the other one for mental is called soother. So you've got a rioter and a soother.
What's the metal
The
called?
best ones of those are the people
Soother.
Yeah, what's the metal?
brass.
Brass.
I'll get onto that one in a
So
second.
they just need some
But the
jazz.
main-
They just need some bit of jazz, and then they're all soothed up.
Sorry.
Jazz soothes everyone.
The biggest thing with zinc and brass, so rioters and soothers, the best people that use those metals are ones that are really good at reading people's emotions. Not in like a magical sense, just in the sense of when you're having a conversation, how good of a read you can get on people.
Right.
Makes sense. I feel like some of that
'cause if you
that
can-
could backfire really badly if you do it wrong.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And it does. But, so say, for example, you can already... So, like, if you see a group of people are feeling passionate about a particular thing, a rioter can inflame that and riot that emotion and make them feel more and more passionate to the point where they just go fucking maniacal about this thing. So the inverse of that, the external pushing metal, is brass, which is soothing emotions. This is my fucking favorite one. Yeah, I fucking love brass. But anyway,
You know you love jazz, Jude.
yeah. That's why I fucking hate that you made that joke, because soothing is my favorite one in the books. But anyway, it is, yeah. So in the same way as rioting, it can dampen particular emotions. There's no limit to what emotions you can riot. Yeah. So like, for example, one of the characters who's the bestest boy in the books, his name is Breeze. You see one particular time that he's trying to what's good enough, like, how can I word it, when he's in he's with a bunch of soldiers basically, and the soldiers are potentially going to die the next day fighting for Breeze and a whole bunch of other people, and he, just looking at them, because he's so experienced of reading people's emotions, he's just kind of like, I can see they're nervous, let's ease their nervousness. And you can, especially when you're playing with people's emotions like this, you can generally see some pretty big physical changes. Like, I don't know, like, imagine if you were sitting there feeling the most nervous you've ever felt in your life, and then just suddenly all the butterflies in your stomach disappear and your nervousness disappears. You're going to physically react more than likely. He sees them physically react another way, and then goes, oh, we'll just soothe that emotion now, and that one, oh, we'll let that one rise up a little bit, soothe that one. And it's just this, yeah, whole big thing.
He's a chef.
Yeah, very
He's
much
a
so.
fine chef balancing flavors.
Then the next two, next two,
just to mention about, I think, and I don't know if I'm right here, but brass, the alloyed brass, is a very like neutral alloy. It doesn't react to a lot of things, and zinc is a very reactive metal. So I don't know. That's just maybe a very
I think that's still.
I will also say I very much find it interesting in terms of how writing can backfire if you're a not experienced reader, like of emotions. Because I'm thinking about like, oh, you've got a fighter who's looking like they're scared, and you want to like amplify that scared because you want to try and beat them in a fight or something like that. But secretly they're like a really experienced fighter, and they're just like balling up for the next move. So you're like, aha, right? They just turn around, and fucking.
yeah, no, straight up.
Also, question: do these emotions affected stay affected?
They do. It does depend how subtle your touch is. So the thing that makes Breeze so good at his craft is that he's got a very subtle touch with his soothing, because he's just very experienced at doing it. The kind of one of the kind of most commonly said things. You bear in mind, as much as Allomancy is, not everyone has it, but it's known enough that if you suddenly experience a massive emotional change in conversation with someone, you can probably put two and two together that they've enhanced your emotions in some way or another.
So someone's just like, oh yeah, hey, thanks for this job interview, by the way. Just let me. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, pretty much.
Take a big sip.
Let's take a big sip.
Sorry, I'm really thirsty. Oh, pulls out like a tiny little vial. Oh.
Yup.
I mean,
yeah,
it is
so-
interesting. Like I don't know. Back to what you said before about the warrior. I just wanted to make a comment on that. I was like the warrior crying on the battlefield, and he's like, "Haha, they're sad. They're gonna lose." It's like these tears aren't for me. Ah! It's good.
Yeah,
Tears of
no,
Rage.
it's very much
It's
so.
so good.
Yeah, and yeah, it can very easily backfire, and the more subtle the touch is, the better.
You
Because
can trick someone with that. Like,
people,
try it.
yeah, people won't like their emotions will change naturally, I guess. Like if you, I mean, look, there's already a spoiler warning, but the main way that Breeze uses his power, and I'm using him as an example because he's the most commonly seen soother in the books.
And because you love him.
He's
He's
a beautiful boy.
The whole thing of the first book is trying to start a rebellion / a heist base. It's kind of like a medieval heist movie tied with a rebellion, so it's a really fucking cool concept. But Breeze really puts himself to use in the recruiting part of the rebellion, because they'll get a whole bunch of people that could potentially recruit, like bring armies into the rebellion, and they'll get them in a room, and he'll play with their emotions from behind like a one-way mirror, just reading them while they're in, because there'll be someone in there, like their charismatic leader person, who's giving them the spiel about how they should join the rebellion and why they should do this, etc., doing these really big proclamations.
You could like time it. Mm-hmm. You got the script there. You're like, all right, and
About
soothe.
now, they're going to be thinking this emotion. Yeah, and that's exactly how he does it.
That's so
And
sick.
The other thing as well, he has
Nope.
like a whole...
I
he
love
has a whole,
emotional
like-
manipulation. Ha.
Yeah, he has like a whole team of... he has like a whole team of soothers that aren't as good as him, but they're decent. And what he'll do... so like in that setting, when he's sitting behind the one-way mirror, he has like... a particular sign where he'll have people with different colored neck scarves, and he uses them as kind of a sign of what emotion people need to be pulling on. So it's really cool. Like he'll send in a red scarfed person when it's time to start like really soothing this emotion to make their anger stand out. Because while you can't riot someone with brass, you can achieve a similar effect by soothing every emotion except the one that you want them to feel. So if you want them to feel really angry, you can riot their emotions other than anger. You can soothe their emotions other than anger.
Interesting.
In this universe,
interesting.
is calm an emotion of its own, or is it a lack of emotion?
It's kind of an emotion of its. Well, it's achieved through soothing other things, I guess.
Okay,
is
so
the-
it is sort of a lack of emotion.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Interesting.
cool.
I was
But
trying.
yeah, to answer,
I was trying to think of
answer your.
Sorry, I was trying to think of an ancient heist movie, like Ocean's 11. I was thinking Ocean's 3.
Ancient.
Like Ocean's 300.
Yeah, yeah. this works.
Sorry.
No, that's cool. But yeah, the to answer your question I was getting to about the like how long it lasts, it depends on like kind of the natural decay of the emotion. So the more subtle your touch is, so like with those rebellion meetings, because of how subtle his touch is and how well he applied it, those people are going to go away feeling very passionate and confident about the rebellion for a long time because it was subtle. Whereas if he'd really, like if someone had really heavily amplified their emotion to be really strong, it's going to come back under control quickly. Because think about like if you get massively angry versus a bit pissed off about a driver, you'll be really angry for a bit, but then you'll kind of calm down over time because you calm down generally. But if you get a bit ticked off by a thing in the morning, you'll be in a shitty mood all day. That's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
guess
the...
it's also about the content of the anger.
Yeah.
Like, if
Yeah,
I
exactly.
get angry at a place because they served me a shitty meal, or if it, an Uber Eats thing, fucked up my order, I'm like, fucking shit. I feel like shit for like 10 minutes, and then afterwards I'm like, whatever. Whereas if it's like, I got angry because someone near me's died, and someone amplifies that, like, I'm gonna be feeling that for fucking years, baby.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. But anyway, I'll move on because we'll keep ticking along. So copper is the next one. Copper people that burn copper are called smokers. They hide allomantic pulses. A big part of the criminal underworld is that people have allomancy that other people don't want them to have, and copper works in tandem with with bronze. Bronze people are called seekers, and they can hear allomantic pulses. So if someone's burning brass, if someone's burning brass and they are, doing emotional stuff, someone that's burning bronze and is a seeker will hear kind of like a rhythmic thumping almost coming from that person, and they'll be able to detect that they're using allomancy.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a hint of magic.
Yeah.
So this is the tax auditors and the money laundering groups on top of the criminal organizations. The criminal
Yeah.
organizations and the government are doing their stuff to do different bits and pieces, but these two are on their own little fight trying to stop the two from interconnecting.
Yeah,
So this,
yeah,
this is
and
the
the
guy.
co-
This,
and
this
s-
is the guy you bring to
and that's-
when you're making a contract with someone to make sure no one's fucking you over.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so the other thing as well, so Seeker's really useful in that regard, but the other thing with people that burn copper, while they're burning it, they themselves are completely immune to all forms of emotional allomancy.
Ooh, nice.
So if you're burning copper, you can't have your emotions played with at all. So it's kind of two effects copper. One, it makes you immune to the thing, and it gives you like a cloud around you, which the strength and experience of your usage of copper will affect how big your cloud is around you, where people can't pierce it to see.
Visible?
Not visible, no.
Okay, cool.
Interesting.
So that's interesting because it'd make a very interesting decision on different organizations. It'll be interesting to see different forms of leaders for organizations in terms of making influence versus not being influenced yourself. Mm-hmm. Charisma being a separate a trait, assuming they're all wonderful speakers, people could amplify emotions through their speeches through that, or otherwise could ensure that they stay true to their cause and aren't influenced themselves. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
I really like how this is called investment. This makes me just think of a business. This is really economic.
So next we'll move on to the enhancement metals. Another Chekhov's gun. Enhancement metals, but that would mean needing to burn 2 metals at once. How would they do that if they can only burn 1? So the internal enhancement metal of pushing is duralium.
Is that a metal?
Duralium there's fantasy metals and real.
I see this.
Oh, okay,
There's fancy
cool.
metals.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I think duralium in the books is a combination between aluminium and something else. I forget the other one, but anyway. So it enhances the other metal that it's being burnt with. So if someone were able to burn steel to push on metals and duralium, they would basically have atomic fucking force behind their push. One time that you see this is someone throw up like an entire coin purse of coins which just go everywhere, and then use a duralium push to basically cause a fucking atomic bomb that just destroys an entire cavalry regiment. Yeah, it's fucking brutal. But anyway,
It's scattergun.
yeah, basically.
Matt's squinting. What's up?
I doubt it's an
but
atomic bomb,
what it-
but like, yeah,
Yeah, figuratively, for
It's a
God's sake.
big scattergun.
big, yeah, big gun.
The other thing it does do as well, the metal that you're burning it with does get wiped out in this push, so it's kind of like a big all for nothing push.
Oh, so it's not a power that burns over time. It's like you use
Use it all at once. Okay,
Yeah,
interesting.
so the duralium doesn't all get used up. You only use a little bit of the duralium, but you'll use up all of your steel to do a really big push.
So you need a little bit of duralium with a shitload of
Yeah,
steel.
yeah, exactly. But
Gotcha.
but if someone was burning tin and they used duralium, they would have sensory overload and just
So you need to have
Question.
You never gested all this stuff, right?
yeah.
So people usually just constantly drinking. They have like 5 water bottles on their
So
on their belts.
different metals burn at different rates. So pewter burns well. It still lasts a long time, but if someone has like a couple vials of pewter, they're gonna go. They've got more than enough to last through like hours of fighting. But some of the other ones, like the emotional ones in particular, burn really slowly. So especially if you're only doing emotional stuff to like 1 or 2 people at a time, you're gonna not need to really top up for like a day at least, just from 1 vial. But you can also, one thing that I'll quickly add here, you can do a thing called flaring, where you just make the metal burn stronger for a bit, but it uses up more of your reserve. So with pewter, while you're normally a bit stronger than a person, so like, I don't know, say you're a D&D character and you're burning pewter, you go from strength 14 up to strength 18. If you flared it, you would go up to strength 22 for 1 turn, but then you've used up more of the reserve.
Yeah.
Just to...
For real world, maybe they can bench like 50 kilograms, and they can bench 70, and now they can bench 150 or some shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they do an insane feat,
Yeah.
but then it's kind of used up their reserves more. I keep digging along. The internal pulling metal for enhancement is aluminium. Aluminium can be used to wipe out allomantic reserves. So if you give it to someone who has another metal inside them, the aluminium will wipe out the other metals.
Do they have to drink it?
So you can kind of sleight of hand it with some of their other things, and they might accidentally ingest it, or you can force them to ingest it. So it's like say you catch someone, you catch someone who's burning pewter in a bit of a trap, and they're surrounded, but you also know that your regular soldiers can't really fight them, so you've just got them surrounded, and you go, we've got your friend and a knife to their throat. Here, drink this vial of aluminium so we know that you're no longer dangerous, and then we'll let them go.
At what point is it drunk? Does it do I have to swallow? Can I just hold it in my cheeks like a chipmunk?
It has to be properly swallowed.
Okay, so I can hold it in my cheeks like a chipmunk.
You can try, but they'll probably
Also,
I had a question about the previous one,
Duralium?
Duralium. Does Duralium make you become one of those addicts faster?
It can do, yeah.
Excellent.
okay. Also, so is aluminium the only one so far that you have to actually make someone else ingest to be able to affect them?
Yes, yes.
And
that's
does
true.
aluminium affect only certain people? Because you said only certain people are attuned to it.
Correct.
Interesting. Also, aluminium. Not that I know that you're about to get onto why aluminium can be useful for certain people. Imagine being only attuned to aluminium.
Yeah,
You're
no, straight up, you get-
that's like being the mutant who can disactivate other mutant powers.
Yeah. Then we'll get into some of the other ones, which these are the quirky ones. So you've got Nigrosil, which enhances... So these are the external versions of those other ones, those other enhancement ones. So Nigrosil basically does what Duralium does, but you can target someone else. So if you're a misting of Nigrosil, you can go, cool, my friend over there who's a thug, I'm going to enhance them for as much as I possibly can.
Damn, you'd be so useful.
But the thing that you can also be quirky about it, you can use it to wipe out someone's reserve. For example, if you see someone that's a tin eye, you can target them and they're going to have one big spray of like enhanced senses and then they're gone. So they're now
right.
useless. And the same with the pewter. You can target an enemy pewter arm to make them do, like if they're just killing one person, you can make their pewter flare. They'll kill that person really fucking well, but then they've run out.
Oh, that's really nasty. You've got to like decide, like, oh, my friend's dead. I'm just gonna pewter this fucking guy up, and then
Yeah, exactly.
You could also
Wow.
if someone's looking into some light and they're not using their tin very much, and then you make their tin red, they can blind them and stuff like that.
Yeah, it will literally... Yeah, exactly. Then Cranium is the other one.
Oh, you could fuck with the emotional people as well. They're trying to like subtly do a thing on a king. You're like, haha.
Punk. Yeah, exactly.
That's so
Now
good.
you made them feel real
So-
sad instead of a little sad.
And also they've realized, oh,
So Cranium is the external version of aluminium. So this lets you target someone and wipe out allomantic reserves.
okay. That way, that's good.
Wait, so
Yeah.
it gets rid of
You can nullify them.
nullify the people who amplify?
Yes.
Okay.
No, nullify
No.
anyone. Like aluminium,
So-
how they suck it and it does their reserves.
Yeah.
You point at a person, their reserve gone.
Oh wait, so that's just aluminium but easier.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Aluminium
no,
is
exactly,
much,
exactly.
much easier.
But okay. Two
So
questions.
it'd kind of suck if you were someone that's attuned to aluminium, but it'd be kind of cool if you were someone that's attuned to cranium.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Two things. One. Two. Okay, what's
Wow, you went past your first question quickly.
number one? I said number one.
1, 2.
Okay.
You said it doesn't matter. Fine, the listeners will get it.
My first question: what is the range on these?
I'll be honest, I'm not actually sure on Nigrosil and cranium.
I mean, all in general.
simply-
In general,
In general,
do they vary?
it does vary a bit. It does come with practice. So someone that is a really new soother will only be able to soothe someone in direct conversation with them, but someone that's like had years of practicing with soothing will be able to affect like a large group of up to 50 people all around them. And I would assume it's the same for Nigrosil and Cranium, but I'll be honest, the books that I've read don't really get into those too much. They're more parts of later books, which are different series.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I'll quickly, I'll spitball the last two medals, and then I'll take your questions.
Okay.
Because these ones are the quirky ones, the quirkiest ones. They
Oh,
are
excellent. Oh, we love it.
They
That's
are
what we're here for.
We're gonna probably pick these ones.
They are the temporal medals.
What?
So there is gold, which if someone who is a misting of gold is called an augur. It reveals your past self, so you can kind of see past visions of yourself. Kind of spooky, but odd. And then the other one, Electrum, people that are called oracles, they can see glimpses of their future.
That seems way more useful. Like, I don't want to be reminded of that time I was really awkward in that conversation. I want to see the
What's the
future
point of an
where I'm
orca?
gonna be
I was
awkward.
gonna say, thing to bear in mind, and this is definitely a big, not subtle at all thing. It is the same 16 the same 16 metals for all 3 magic systems. So a metal that's maybe not as useful in one magic system may have a better use in a different magic system.
Did they ever go across magic systems?
Are we only one magic system down?
Yeah, this is the
Holy
longest.
shit.
I'm gonna. This is the longest one.
Okay, I was gonna be like, we're gonna be here for a while.
Yeah. This is why I say I wanted to kind of mainly go into these afterwards, but
Sorry.
So I'll just keep spitballing them, and then Electrum lets people see into their future a bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you done?
That's yeah.
I have one more question.
Those.
How does
Yes.
the rarity of these metals affect their use? Like, if they're more rare metals, are they less used? Are they more expensive to use in that sense?
Yeah, well, that's the thing as well, especially for people that aren't, like, rich nobles. They have to actually kind of think about, like, for example, if you're a gold burner, you're not really going to use it very much. If you're someone that uses, I don't know, iron's probably one of the cheaper ones compared to the rest of them, so you use that a bit more flagrantly, but some of the more expensive ones, it is very valid.
It's
Is that why a lot of the novels focus on heists? Because they're using a little bit of pewter to get a lot of pewter?
Yeah, kind of.
Excellent,
And that they're kind of fairly rich underworld criminals more than anything.
Interesting.
Yeah, yes, other question?
I don't have another.
Did you have another one,
I
Matt?
don't know. That was
Cool.
That was my
Cool.
second question from before.
Excellent. So I'll move on to the next magic system, which
I picked
is...
the one that I picked the metal that boosts to other people. I'm a support character. What can I say?
Oh, I was definitely not going to pick that one because in a world where there are no other people to boost, it's useless.
I
you
trust
gonna
myself to
in
be part
this
of a cool crew.
in this universe, I would pick the one that lets me. Oh, you can't pick push and pull. You can only pick one.
Yeah, pick one.
Oh.
Pick
I want the
coward.
one that makes me just all up strong, tough.
Pewter?
Pewter. I want pewter. I think
Nice,
pewter would be really useful in like every. It's never not useful to have pewter.
Yeah,
And Jude's
it is,
picking an emotional one. Damn, we're covering our classes. That's cool as.
Yeah, so next magic system we'll move on to, and I'll just get through this one a bit quicker, is Ferrochemy.
Oh.
So Ferrochemy is the half and half one. It is, in a lot of ways, the weakest and also the most interesting of the magic systems. It is end neutral, as all the power comes from the person and none is wasted. The whole thing of Ferrochemy is that it is based on redistribution and storing. A ferrochemist can use metals almost like a bank. They can store an attribute inside of the metal and then tap into it later, drawing on its power. For example, with pewter, they can store physical strength inside of that metal and then draw on it in the future to greatly increase their strength for an amount of time equal to the time they spent storing. The drawback of this is the process of storing in metal is literally draining. If a ferrochemist wishes to store physical strength, they have to be physically weak and almost skeletal-like in build while they store that strength. They literally put their physical strength and ability into this metal, and then they can draw on it in the future. One of the uses we see of this, a group of ferrochemists being very gifted adventurers / mountaineers, as they spend all night sleeping in, like, basically really tight sleeping bags, while they're putting all of their physical strengths. They're basically just like old, decrepit skeletal men sleeping in sleeping bags at night for 8 hours, but then this means they've got 8 hours of, like, triple strength.
Nice. It's like the speed spell in D&D.
Yeah.
The other way around.
The last magic system was short-term investment. This is long-term investments.
Yeah, exactly.
We got to bring it back to what the name of this magic is called investment.
Yeah, and like I say, this is the ultimate neutral one. You're only using your own power. There's nothing external, which is really cool about Ferrochemy. That I think at least that you aren't tapping into someone else's power and using it. Everything you're using comes from you.
Yeah, interesting. It's very self-dependent, independent. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll quickly just kind of. Yeah, as much as you'll be tempted to, I'm just going to quickly spitball through all of them.
I will shut the fuck up. That is my solemn promise to you.
Sure.
That's a miracle.
Iron.
Fingers crossed.
So iron they can use to store physical weight. Steel they can use to store physical speed. Tin they can use to store senses. Pewter they can use to store strength. Zinc they can use to store mental speed. So just actual intelligence. Copper they can use to store memories and information. Brass they can use to store warmth. Bronze they can use to store wakefulness. Chromium they can use to store fortitude. Nigrosil they can use to store... it's complicated, honestly. I'll leave that one out.
What?
And same with beryllium. Look, just trust me.
Cool.
Yeah. Gold they can use to store health, so kind of like... it's really the best one in a lot of ways, because they can use it to store health in the sense of, like, healing ability.
Hit points.
So they can store health into their gold ring, and then if they suffer a really bad wound, they can draw upon that health to make the wound heal up really quickly.
They save red blood cells.
Can you
Yeah.
give the metal to someone else to use it on them?
No.
Disappointing. Continue.
Well,
Oh god, don't.
so if someone uses a metal to store something, only they can draw on that metal. But they can give the metal to someone else, and someone else can do something else with a metal. It's just that they can't give their strength to someone else.
Yeah.
Right, so if someone I liked was being stabbed, I couldn't put the gold ring on their finger and they wouldn't heal. Gotcha.
What you could do, if you were a ferrochemist and you had a friend who was a allomancer, you could, in desperate times, shove your pewter ring down their throat to make them burn it.
But it wouldn't have any additional powers.
No, it wouldn't give them your strength as well.
And you're losing the strength that you already stored in that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
Which
gotcha, sick.
these ferrochemists spend the main part that I wanted to touch on was the copper, storing memories, because these guys are really big scholars. They store
that's crazy.
thousands of years of memories inside their copper rings. They're like big armbands that they have rather made of copper.
I could think of a really cool way, like a D&D item, and like as you store memories on it, it like gets very small inscriptions along it until you get like a full. That's cool as.
So one of the things that you see with this, and we'll get onto them, are people that they spend their life collecting research and storing books into copper, so they can draw on it to have any information they want. And
Once
then
it's drawn on, does it get rid of it?
Say I read the Mistborn series and I read Lord of the Rings and I store them inside my copper. I could then tap into that and then just kind of almost machine-like recite out the entirety of Lord of the Rings and the Mistborn series, but I would then have to read them again to put it... Well, I would then have to
so it is
kind of
being
say
taken
it.
out.
Yeah, and then you can put it back in very
But
easily.
usually people who are taking it out would be like writing it down or putting it somewhere.
Yeah,
so they
exactly.
Can put it back in again.
Exactly.
Question.
That's what they do.
Question. You didn't explain Electrum. You explained gold, but not Electrum.
It's a bit complicated, I believe, with ferrochemy.
Okay.
There's
There's three you're not going to explain from this one.
Yeah, it's not because I'm saving them for later. It's just because it'll make the conversation get complicated.
Fair enough.
and-
Fair enough.
If we have time at the
Our,
end,
we have-
our
yeah,
futile brains cannot comprehend what they do.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Fragile.
So anyway, so you'll get people that they spend their life collecting research inside this copper, and then they will, when they're getting really old and they think it's time to give up their mantle, they'll find a young ferrochemist and then they'll recite all of their knowledge from their copper to that person, and that person will store it in their copper.
what's
and
the
then
ratio of
pass on.
time that takes? Like, it's not.
Very fucking long
That would
time.
take
for some of the
that would
later
take like
ones.
a
was
year
thinking.
or years.
Yeah.
By the
it
time that
does.
they've already done it, they've like already aged. They got to pass it on to the next guy. Nice.
I mean, okay.
Yeah, it's
And it gets longer with every person.
Yeah, it does. Which one would you pick, Guy?
Storing. Wait, I want to be a fat boy now. Storing strength, I guess. I don't know.
I'd pick storing.
They're all pretty
I'd
subtle.
pick storing intelligence.
yeah.
I have an issue with that. Storing intelligence. You said it was storing mental speed. Mental speed is not the same as intelligence. I can do maths very quickly, but I'll also do it wrong.
Yeah.
I
Like you
need
say, a
that
lot of this
for
stuff
my
is
exam. But the memory
the
will be so
reason
useful
that-
for the exam too. Oh.
the thing with this, especially ferrochemy, because it's so individual, like case by case. Like one person storing their physical strength does not equal the same as someone else storing their physical strength, because they've got two different starting points. And the same as storing the mental speed. Like, you storing your mental speed would be very different to someone else storing their mental speed. Tin, which allows... Well, I'm saying I was honestly saying you're smart, but
No.
anyway.
I was literally called the embodiment of stupid earlier in this episode.
Yeah.
The god of stupid, even.
Yeah, the embodiment.
Oh,
But Jude, okay, so in this universe, like these kind of rings banned for like sport. What about sports events? This kind of stuff. Or like,
Honestly, we'll get to it.
okay, and what about like exams? Or we'll get to it.
It's not really a thing that comes up.
Okay, but
because
like I'm just imagining like they'll ban.
ferrochemists are pretty much dead by the time of the books. I'll put it there, and then I'll explain it more later.
Okay, I'm
but
just thinking.
Storing healing, I think, is going to save me a lot of
I'm just
medical
I'm
bills,
just
so-
I'm just thinking of putting a copper ring in my underwear so they can't see it, and then just having
It's a cock ring.
no something copper in my that I store the memory of all.
It has
these
to be. It has to be in skin to skin contact. So,
Well, there you go.
Anyway,
I'm also
moving on to the third magic system.
No, I'm not an elemental. I have a very good reason to wear this copper ring. It's sentimental.
Yes. So
No rings.
hemalurgy. Hemalurgy is the third and final magic system. It is full ruin. There is no preservation in this one at all.
Oh yeah.
So this one is end negative, as ultimately power will be lost while using it. The metal involved in hemalurgy comes in the form of smaller shards or spikes, though it does not have to necessarily be a spike, just any piece of metal that can penetrate flesh. The metal then has to stab through a bind point on someone. So, for example, it might be the heart, it might be a particular artery in their leg, on someone possessing an allomantic or ferrochemic power. This then charges the spike with the power, and then the spike is removed and stabbed into someone else. That person then effectively steals the power of the person that lost it.
Nice.
Any metal is a spike if you're strong enough.
Oh, exactly. No, precisely. Like, some metals that end up being spikes, people don't even consider that it could have been a spike, and they're trying to work out how are things happening with a character. And then it turns out that a blade has gone through someone's heart and landed into their shoulder and then broken off a bit, and then that's led to hemalurgy. But anyway.
Well, I was more thinking about, like, I cut a hole open with a different knife and then put a blunt object in.
Yeah, not quite.
Disappointing.
Yeah, it has to be.
Or,
It
like,
has to be metal.
I mean, with people with extra strength, you could get like a fucking fist of metal and just put it into someone because they have super strength in this universe. They can go through their chest.
Yeah, but the problem is the spike then has to go into someone else and stay in them.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't really work.
It's easier
fist,
with
but-
needles.
That makes sense.
It's easier
Yeah.
with needles. But everyone's tried to think their way around this. Doesn't matter. It's easy.
It's easier with
Move on.
needles.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Stab you, I stab myself.
Hemalurgy has a unique, cool side effect in power boost. So if someone already possesses an allomantic power and they're given a hemalurgic spike of that power, it gives them a massive boost in that, similar to Duralium boost.
Ooh.
So if someone is already a pewter arm, and then someone takes a spike, stabs and kills someone with the spike to take their pewter, and then puts that pewter spike into the person who's already got pewter, they've got enhanced pewter.
Do I have to kill them?
It kills the person that loses the power.
Every time?
Yeah.
That would suck. I found
yeah.
out my only power works if I murder people.
No, you don't. Hemalurgy can be done by anyone.
Oh, sicko
In
mode.
theory.
Okay, cool. I'm fine then.
Yeah.
So anyone can kill people.
Yeah. It's more the knowledge of. It's more getting the knowledge. So the problem with hemalurgy, and this is where it gets a bit. Anyone that has a hemalurgic spike in them means that they are vulnerable to ruin. Ruin can now speak into their mind. And subtly,
Like you mentioned before.
yes, and ruin can now, and it may have been the big twist that someone that had sentimental attachment to a metal object that they thought was a piercing that was given to them by a parent, and it ended up being that it was ruin connecting to them their entire life, and that ruin can, similar to the emotional
Okay, now you definitely
allomancy,
just did
ruin,
spoil it.
well, there's a spoiler warning for a reason.
That's true.
Ruin can fuel different emotions inside someone, similar to emotional allomancy. So it can make you feel more nostalgic about an object. So, for example, if you have a piercing that it's using to talk to you, it can then use that piercing to fuel your nostalgia and sense of like trust to that object and keep it in you longer, basically.
Do piercings have to be very big?
No, they can be tiny. They can be fucking tiny.
I'm with you. I see your game.
Yeah.
So you get really, really small things.
And the more spikes that someone has, the more vulnerable they are to ruin. So if someone only has one spike in them, it means that ruin can speak to them, can subtly influence them, but can't really do much. 2, he has a little bit more power. 3, he can directly control their body.
That's a big jump.
Physical control of them. And then 4 is 4 or more, they basically lose free will if Ruin decides that he wants them
That
to.
kind of reminds
Does that
me.
last permanently?
He can't be everywhere at once, but if he wants to, he can just take control of you at any time.
But if I take him out?
If you take out the spikes, then he loses the ability to. But a lot of
Excellent.
these spikes are driven into places where removing them's probably going to bleed the person out.
Not great.
But then I've got my gold ring of healing.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's a definite thing. That can work.
Hey, I'm on top of this. I got
Yeah,
my shit figured out.
The thing,
It's interesting. It's almost like a patron in D&D.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's very much like it.
You're bringing power from a big deity that's usually not great.
I'll give a quote about hemalurgy. So hemalurgy, it is called because of the connection to blood. It is not a coincidence, I believe, that death is always involved in the transfer of powers via hemalurgy. Marsh once described it as a messy process. Not the adjective I would have chosen. It's not disturbing enough. Because if you think about the fact of like a ritual of making someone into a powerful creature that you want to make them with hemalurgy, you're taking someone else, driving a spike into their heart, pulling it out, and then stabbing it into someone else and like embedding it. So it's
It's always one of those fun things of like you see, we have to make human sacrifices in this to like, to fuel the thing, and it's like very vague about how it does this. This is just, hey, here's how we're gonna do it.
You kind of like, do they run out? Do like the like, obviously you run out if you want to swallow it, but like, if you stab that person, they obviously have a limited amount of that essence in them.
as soon as the spike goes into someone, it stops deteriorating. But while the spike is outside of a body, it deteriorates.
Interesting.
So that's why a lot of the time when people are trying to do this transfer of power, they get the two people they're trying to switch it between in the same rooms. They can do it as quickly as possible. Because if you steal the power and then have to travel half the kingdom to put it into someone else, it's going to lose a lot of the power as you go.
Yeah, you're like, okay, you ready?
Yeah,
Stab.
How many times do you reckon someone who has healing ability, like pewter, has been like transferred into like a dying king or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Because it can be used to steal not only allomancy powers, but ferrochemical powers. So if someone is a ferrochemist, they could steal their ability to store health and put it in someone else.
Yeah, did you go through the powers, or are they just to steal every metal is to steal the other metal?
Different. I'll get into that in a sec, but I'll do first off the wildest part of hemalurgy, constructs. Any hemalurgy warps people on the spiritual plane, but physical change is required for a subject to be classified as a hemalurgic construct. There are 3 types of known hemalurgic construct. So Steel Inquisitors are former humans with 9 to 11 spikes, each charged with an allomantic or ferrochemical power.
Damn.
They have 2 massive spikes of iron embedded through their eyes, which grant them iron and steel to see in lieu of actual eyes, and a linchpin spike placed in the lower back holding their fraying spirit webs together. Removal of this spike results in death.
Do they like explode as like a grenade pin?
No, they just kind of fall apart.
That's so disappointing.
Yeah. I'll quickly.
That's actually
I'll
horrifying.
quickly send you some. Steel Inquisitors.
While you're sending that, I want to ask you. I want to ask. Okay, so storing memories in copper. If I spike someone who stored memories in copper, put it in myself, can I read there?
You can steal their memories. Yes.
Excellent.
Okay.
So well written.
I do love the thought of iron and steel being used as eyes because you use the push and pull to feel objects around you, right?
Yeah.
So
which one of the things
that's
about
so
steel
cool.
One of the things with steel and iron, it lets you see metal somewhat illuminated in blue as well.
Yeah.
So it's I just sent you a couple images of some steel Inquisitors.
Oh, okay. One sec.
Stinky. Oh man, the spikes coming out the back of the head stinks.
These are really edgy boys.
Yeah, they're really, and the
They're
problem.
9 to 11 spiked people.
Why does
Like,
he look so happy about the spikes in his eyes?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, the
would
thing
you not
is,
be happy if you were a super god?
That's true.
I'll get the next one.
So are
up
these guys
as
just
well.
controlled by Ruin completely? I guess.
Yeah. So the more spikes they have, the more. We'll get to it a little bit more. This is the next one. So the next one, construct, are called Colossus.
Ooh.
So Colossus, there's an average human. They are brutish, monstrous beings created with 4 iron spikes, each charged with human strength. They lose all of their intelligence but gain immense strength. They continue to grow until they die. So they have one set of skin that they grow into throughout their life, and then they keep growing, and the bigger they get, the more the skin starts to stretch and crack and
Let me
flake and
guess,
stuff.
they're big buff boys.
Yeah, they're just insanely strong soldiers. So the next one are called Kandra. Kandra are
The high resolution version of it.
Oh, see, yeah. Kandra are former Mistwraiths, which I'll explain them in a bit. But
That sounds like some Lord of the Rings shit.
I really hate the I'm sorry for interrupting, but the floppy construct, what are they? Colossus before they become big buff.
Yeah.
I don't like them. I don't like them.
Now imagine them with a massive sword that can just cleave you in half
Yeah,
without a
it's
second
not
thought.
fun.
Nice.
Yeah. So then Kandra, they are charged with human attributes, and the Kandra know this is a blessing, and it makes them go from a Mistwraith into a Kandra. Kandra is basically a gelatinous creature that is a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
They can, by digesting the bones of a living creature, they can take the shape of that creature and then remodel their gelatinous body to be that person, basically.
I'm into it.
But they need the person's bones. So if you kill someone, the Kandra can then take on that person's bones and become that person.
That's really useful.
Yeah.
And I'm into it.
The thing as well, they only have 2 spikes, so they're the least susceptible to ruin.
There you go. So
The
you only need 2.
the final quote about hemalurgy before I move on to the world stuff.
Sorry, what were they called?
Kandra. You probably won't see too many good images of them because they're shapeshifters.
I mean, they are
and such,
shapeshifters, but they're slime
yeah.
boys, aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Every image of them is basically a shapeshifter. Oh.
Yeah, some of them kind of just are like translucent bodies with bones.
Yeah, I don't like
if they
that.
don't want to. Yeah, they're really not
Can I
cool.
also say, just very quickly before we move on, Colossus, one of the things that it says is the skin of an immature Colossus is extremely loose and sagging, while that of a mature Colossus stretches so tightly across the muscles that it often splits and bleeds freely. It is hypothesized that this is because the skin of a Colossus does not grow during its lifespan, while the rest of the Colossus grows ceaselessly. I don't want to be rude, but I'm getting major lobster vibes off this shit.
Yeah.
It's a lobster.
Yeah. Anyway, so the final quote: "For all that it disgusts me, I cannot help but be impressed by hemalurgy as an art. In allomancy and ferrochemy, skill and subtlety come through the application of one's powers. The best allomancer might not be the most skillful, but instead the one who can best manipulate pushes and pulls. The best ferrochemist is the one who is most capable of sorting the information in his copper mines, or best able to manipulate his weight with iron. The art that is unique to hemalurgy, however, is the knowledge of where to place the spikes." So I'll just quickly spitball through them and then we'll move on. So
Be
iron,
careful.
yeah.
No
iron,
shit.
Iron steals strength. Steel steals physical allomantic powers. Pewter steals physical ferrochemical powers. Tin steals senses. Zinc steals emotional fortitude. Brass steals cognitive ferrochemical powers. Bronze can steal mental elemental powers. Copper steals mental fortitude, memory, and intelligence. Chromium might steal destiny. Nicrosil might steal investiture, so basically magic. Duralium can steal connection/identity. Aluminium can just remove all powers.
How
Same
do you
as
steal
aluminium's
identity?
boring.
I mean, we just went over a shapeshifter that steals
Yeah.
people's bodies.
I
but
guess.
that's
Okay,
fine.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Cadium. Those are 2 I'm ignoring for now. Huh? And then that's Electrum can be used to steal enhancement allomantic ones, so like Duralium and stuff. But we won't worry
What was
about that
gold?
too much. Gold, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It steals.
Just adds other layers.
It steals time itself. Mwah.
Yes, it does. So that's the magic systems. We'll move on to the world itself briefly. Yeah.
Brief.
Oh, wow. I actually thought it was later than it was. That's okay.
I mean, we're well into the episode.
48.
I know. So, millennia ago, the Shards, Ruin, and Preservation arrived at the Scadrian system, deliberately choosing a star with no relevant planets, and created the planet Scadrial. Since they were paired shards with opposite intents, nothing but a barren planet could be constructed, and nothing could be destroyed, as they both wanted to create and destroy separately. They were locked in an eternal conflict, but then a pact was struck. Preservation offered Ruin a bargain. If Ruin would help him create life on Scadrial to make plants and animals and humans and stuff, Preservation would eventually let him destroy the whole planet. Preservation's greatest wish was to create sentient life, humans patterned after the other humans the two of them had known before they became gods. In order to create humans with a spark of intelligence, it would require a small amount more of Preservation than Ruin. This made Preservation slightly weaker, meaning Ruin would eventually overcome his opposite and destroy the planet. However, Preservation decided to break the agreement in order to save the world, which is how he lost his power and basically started to die. He broke a pact.
I thought their vows were.
That's why he's dying.
That's why he's dying.
He's dying because he broke the vow.
Yeah.
Well, he should have stayed to his word.
Well, so he decided to break the agreement in order to save the world. He couldn't overcome Ruin because he was losing power and was now weaker than Ruin by a lot because he'd broken his vow. So he decided to trap Ruin's mind in a prison where Ruin would be nearly powerless. In order to trap Ruin's mind, Preservation used his own mind to forge the prison, sacrificing his cognition for the greater good. This prison is known as the Well of Ascension. This also left an echo of the power of Preservation in the world, a mist that forms at night. It's like a regular mist, except that it reacts to allomancers due to their shared nature of Preservation, and anyone that's burning tin can see right through it. So yeah, that's why Preservation's basically dead and dying, and just a really incorporeal mist spirit thing that can't do much, because he's given up his mind to trap the other one, and he's broken his word, so he's lost a lot of power.
Oh boy, I sure hope no one opens the Well of Ascension.
I can't imagine.
I'm glad we have Jude on this podcast. I love listening to Jude tell me stories. So
thank you.
It's great.
With the mind split from the body, Preservation hid Ruin's body in the world of Scadrial in such a form that he could not find it. Being just a trapped mind, Ruin could no longer hold a large sway over the world. All Ruin could achieve was the changing text, not written on metal. He could interact with people's minds in more subtle ways, pretty much only people that were pierced by hemalurgic spikes. So that was all he could do, really. To achieve anything more, he would have to break free of the well. Ruin's one hope, the power of the Well of Ascension, would spend 1,024 years gathering. Once the power gathered, it could be used by someone to either set Ruin free or to reaffirm the binds and keep him locked away.
I mean, for them, that would be like no time at all.
Yeah, exactly. It's
How many
literally no
years?
time. 1,024.
It's a binary
16
number.
That is a
times
binary
16. 16 times 16 times 4, I think it is. But
Okay,
anyway.
cool.
Preservation did not leave humans without hope to defend themselves if Ruin managed to break free. He left the people of Scadrial with the Terrace prophecies. They spoke of a series of heroes who would come to take the power of the Preservation at the Well of Ascension every 1,000 years, and they would become the protector of humanity. Eventually, a final hero would come, known as the Hero of Ages, a person who would bear the future of the world on their arms. This person would take up the power of Preservation to save the world.
Link.
Oh boy.
Link. Sure.
Prophecies passed down through generation in memories that definitely shouldn't be altered by anyone at all.
He can alter text. It's also one thing.
Ruin
The
could
only
also...
way to save the world is to open the Well of Ascension and also to have a big plate of cookies
I
ready.
can change text. How did Preservation not see that coming? Preservation.
So, on to stuff in the actual world. The world of Scadrial existed for some 1,000 years, during which time many different nations and cultures came to power. The two most significant of these are the Terrace and the Clenium. This is a very early industrial world. You have some basic things like pocket watches, but it's still very bows and arrows, swords and castles. In this world, the ancient beings of Preservation Ruin begun to pass out of memory, because no one was alive when they were a thing. Everyone just kind of got created and was like, this is the world, I guess, because no one had known that these two gods just fought to give them life. So new religions and faiths began to fill the world over 1,000 years because people like religion.
Crazy.
Are there cannons in this world? Well, there's a lot of metals and stuff like that, so it makes sense they know how metals react to each other. So is there gunpowder cannons?
Not yet.
Okay.
Concerning.
So the Terrace are a largely nomadic people, shepherds, farmers, dressing in furs, etc. The Terrace hold the power of ferrochemy. This is their whole thing. Not everyone in the Terrace people has it, but it's very much a recessive/dominant gene situation. But compared to the other nations, the Terrace are a very separate people, and they don't mingle much with other nations. They don't interbreed, so the power of ferrochemy was kept entirely to their people. During this time, there was a holy order of ferrochemist scholars known as Worldbringers. They served as teachers and bearers of knowledge throughout the world. Not every ferrochemist was a member, however, every world bearer was a ferrochemist. Right. However, many had much more mundane vocations, such as being herders or guides. Like, other ferrochemists might just be like a mountain guide who has really good knowledge about these mountains, or a bird person who knows really good things about these birds. Unlike you, Matt.
I know a lot about birds.
That was a joke, but the Klenium are the other culture we'll talk a little bit about. They are very sort of traditional late medieval kingdom, towering castles, elegant ball gowns, tailored suits, extreme wealth, you name it. Klenium is the most powerful of these kingdoms, and Klenium and the other kingdoms have very, very, very few allomancers. So few that it is a very rare and respected gift, very unlike the Terrace ferrochemists. But the fun thing as well here that you have to bear in mind, because so few people were allomancers, that means that even more people don't know they're an allomancer, because if it's such a rare thing that you can use a metal, you're not just going to down every metal you can find and see if it causes a reaction, you know? Or maybe some people would do that.
How do they find that?
Yeah.
Is it by accident
Yeah.
they find it?
The way that a lot of people discover it, when they're not connected, because it's generally genetic. So if you've got a father, a mother, a grandmother, a grandfather that's an allomancer, it's probably worth checking if you are. Or like a distant relative that is, then it might be worth checking if you are. But the way that a lot of people find out is they accidentally use their power through trace metals. So if you eat, I don't know, let's say you spend like a long time, and you have fucking cutlery that's made out of steel, you might get the trace amounts of steel in your blood that lets you do like the tiniest interaction, and then you go, oh, and then you have more steel, and then it unlocks it more.
Eat a big bit of steak and you get
Get
some
a
iron
big
in you.
steak.
Yeah.
It'll be like,
so
it's kind of like the Force. You know, my father had it, my sister has it.
Yeah, it's
I
a very
have
genetic thing. So we start our story now with a young man named Elendi, and of course, the end of the world.
Of course.
That's where I
as
like
it
to
is-
start it off, personally.
As it is nearing the 1024 year mark, Ruin's bonds beginning to weaken. This means that Ruin can do slightly more things to the world. He can now not just interact with written word, he can start to slightly interact with the copper memories of some of the ferrochemists.
I thought you were about to say
remember-
spoken word.
Oh, no, not quite. If you remember, the ferrochemy
Copper,
is
that's
half...
such a bad thing to keep memories in if someone confessed with it.
Well, they don't know that, because no one knows about Ruin and Preservation. But, yeah, so bear in mind, because ferrochemy is half Ruin, half Preservation, so that means that Ruin has a little bit of a sway over
So this
it,
whole
but
world
not
has only been
full.
around for 1,000 years.
Hard to say. It's believed that this could be like the 6th or 7th time the well's been awakened,
Okay.
and there's been a whole bunch of other people that have gone up and solved it, but it's not known for sure.
It's interesting because it's because you said that preservation can only see a couple thousand years into the future, which is good.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like it depends if it's this 1,000 years, like this is what he planned for. But if it's like 6,000 years, it's like he didn't plan for this shit. He's
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah.
could be anything could
Also-
happen.
Preservation's only lucid from time to time. Is he just fucking around in a town being like the town drunk?
No, he's mainly just a kind of
He's a mist, though.
extra-dimensional
He's a
thing.
mist.
Yeah, he's kind of the nightly mists and stuff.
Okay, right. So he's not necessarily sitting in a...
He's not a person.
He can't take
no,
a
no.
form. Remember?
Yeah.
Right,
Ruin-
right.
yeah.
Well, because you described his
Ruin-
form, so I thought that maybe...
Yeah. No, that's good.
He probably takes a long
So Ruin, so Ruin's bonds are weakening. So the first sign that they saw of the end of the world, well, the thing that started to cause stress was the nightly mists began to kill people.
Oh.
While in truth it was a distant, because the mists are preservation, bear in mind, this was a distant echo of preservation, and it was actually trying to cause people to snap. So it would infect. So people that have potential for allomancy would collapse in the mist in like this convulsive seizure, to try and make them snap, because preservation knew they'd need more allomancers to try and deal with ruin coming back. But the problem is, this is a dying god's weird dream thing. It doesn't have lots of power, so if it's giving someone a near-death experience, some people are going to die, older, younger, weaker.
Sometimes he misses the near bit.
He's also
Exactly.
a god, so he's not probably precise in all that power he has.
We were literally talking at the start of the episode about how imprecise some of their actions are.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll just give him a little seizure.
He's dead. Ah, fuck.
So this unfortunately resulted in a few deaths, because if you're dealing with a kingdom, so it'll be like 1 in a million people dies, but when you're dealing with a kingdom, with like a country that's got hundreds of millions of people living in the world, it adds up. The process unfortunately resulted in a few deaths around the world, and people did not survive the near-death experience. As allomancy was so rare, people didn't even realize that they were snapping, because they didn't think to check. They just were like, oh god, I had a seizure, what the fuck. The next thing, while preservation had predicted ruin would try to destroy the mists, this time ruin saw a more clever approach, and the mists instead began to linger during the day and even form during the day. This all-land coverage began to cause the crops to die and become known as the deepness.
Ooh.
Because it was mist that would not leave during the day and would drown out cities, mean that people were constantly living in darkness, and yeah.
Hey, preservation? You're kind of being a dick.
Yeah, pretty much. It was ruin that's making the mist happen this way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Then fair enough, that's his job.
Preservation's predicted that ruin will try to destroy the mists, which potentially it has done in future, like past thousands of years, but this time ruin saw the approach of making the mists stay around and cause damage.
Well, then, good on you, Ruin. You're doing a job.
If people are scared of the mists, they're going to try and fight the mists, which is where they turned to the Terrace Prophecies. So people turned to the Terrace Prophecies to guide them against this new threat. The deepness is what they called the threat. The mists, the nightly mists, they grew stronger. So Ruin was supplementing their strength. He had hoped to create a threat to the world by going with preservation's wishes instead of against them, so he was clever. The world was dying. All the plants and animals couldn't survive, and people were beginning to starve. At this time, a man named Elendi came to power. A world bringer, so one of those scholar council people named Quan, had discovered Elendi and believed him to be this hero of ages that we spoke about. Who would save the entire world. Elendi became convinced he was the hero and began a military campaign to unite the world against the deepness, doing his best to fulfill the prophecies. Unfortunately, those prophecies were no longer the same as they once were.
Yeah, you done fucked up.
Where Quan had first discovered Elendi, and it was, he brought it to the other Worldbringers. They're like, this isn't the dude. And Quan was like, yeah, it was. All of a sudden, they started to really read over the prophecy, and it was weird. The description fitted him almost perfectly.
Oh, Ruin.
Why didn't preservation go just a little thing? Tell some people.
An example.
Hey, you can change text, you idiots.
For example,
Question. Sorry, you said he was changing copper bands. Didn't you say you couldn't change text on metals?
he can't change the text, but he can change the actual memories inside of them in the Ferrochemists.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Which that's only because a Ferrochemy is the 50-50 half preservation, half ruin. That's how he has that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. One of the... we don't really have too many examples of how ruin changed the original prophecy, but other ways that he may have changed it and the way that it continues to be changed. Having sentences that say, at worst, I fear that all we believe may have been corrupted, has been changed to, I fear that I have corrupted all that we believe. To try and shift blames. Yeah, you get the idea.
Victim blaming.
So, yeah. So Ruin had used his tiny bit of power to alter the words of the prophecies that were inside the Worldbringers' metal mines, their copper. They now stated that the hero should give up the power at the Well of Ascension rather than keep it. This is an action that would free Ruin, and he tailored the prophecies to fit Elendi more perfectly so that there would be no doubt in people's minds that he was the hero of ages. Quan, the man who first brought Alendi to the Conclave of Worldbringers, noticed the alteration because he was just like, wait, this doesn't add up. I remember it being different, but everyone called him dumb. He was, why? But our thing says otherwise. Screw you. He attempted to convince the Conclave, but they would not listen to him, much as they didn't listen to him when he first brought Alendi in there. Funny how things turn. And he turned to Alendi, his former friend, but Alendi refused to believe that he wasn't the hero. Because
if you've taught him he is, then it's kind of your fault.
And the fun part of one of the parts of the prophecy that changed, it spoke of the piercings of the hero.
Oh no.
So naturally, he had several piercings of metal, which then meant Ruin could speak to him and control him more.
No.
Which
What was that
effectively gave
changed
him.
from? The hero has no piercings, or
I
the hero has
don't
a
specifically.
lot
They
of
just
piercings.
described like they're wearing a crown, probably that sort of stuff.
I could also mean like they are influenced by metal, or they can use the metals rather than pierced by metals.
Yep. Which allowed Ruin to subtly influence him. So Alendi had until now failed to stop the deepness, because what do you unite the entire world, but how does that stop mists,
Big fan.
So there was only one hope, seeking the Well of Ascension. As the power had returned to the well, Alendi could hear pulses because he was a seeker. If you remember before, I mentioned how seekers could hear allomantic pulses. The Well of Ascension is Preservation's mind in a prison form. Preservation is allomancy, so it gives off an allomantic pulse. And Alendi, remember how I mentioned that someone that is a seeker and then they get spiked and they become like a better seeker? Mm-hmm. This is what allowed him to hear the pulses of the well. He had hoped that giving up the power would stop the deepness. So he'd go to the well, he'd take the power, he'd give up the power, and it would save the world. But Quan knew that Alendi mustn't be allowed to reach the well, for he knew that giving up the power is just what Ruin wanted. Quan's only hope to stop Alendi was his nephew Rashek, a ferrochemist who hated Alendi and the nation of Klenium from which he hailed. Quan commanded his nephew to become Alendi's friend and packmate and attempt to mislead him on the way to the well. If Rashek failed at that, Quan asked him to kill Alendi as a last resort. The last remnant of Preservation's mind, in the form of the Mist Spirit, was also doing its best to stop Alendi. Ruin, however, made Alendi distrust the spirit by impersonating it and stabbing one of his other friends.
Oh no.
So then all of a sudden the spirit was distrusted. Ultimately, Rashek failed to lead Alendi astray, and I was forced to kill him. At this point, Rashek himself took the power at the Well of Ascension and refused to give it up, denying Ruin his chance at freedom.
Yes.
While holding the power, Rashek's mind was expanded, but he wasn't accustomed to such great power and had no experience with using it. Rashek attempted to destroy the mist by moving the planet Scadrial closer to the sun in order to burn away the mists. Unfortunately, Scadrial's new location was too hot for life, so Rashek tried to move the planet further away from its star, which left the planet too cold. Rashek then tried to move the star closer again, but it was still too hot. Having no point of reference for where the planet should go, he elected to leave it closer so it was a bit hotter, but not too hot to live. He began working retroactively to fix the problems he had created for himself, because the intent of Preservation, which he's now become Preservation, which was left in the well, whose power was made up of the well, was affecting him, so his instincts was to preserve rather than to act to react. To counter the increased heat, he made lots of volcanoes on the world, volcanoes which pumped gas and ferromagnetic ash into the air. These shaded the land near the North Pole, which was one of the two relatively cool places remaining on the planet, the other being the South Pole. Gas from the ash mounts also made the atmosphere thicker, which raised the temperatures in the rest of the world, turning it even hotter. This resulted in a massive desert in other parts of the world, but there were still habitable parts. Rashek realized that ash from the ash mounts would eventually bury the whole land. Thus, he created plants and microbes that would break down the ash. When Rashek altered humans in the North Pole, he made them more able to survive a world full of ash. He worried that if he changed their physiology too much, it would kill them, so he left some humans unaltered, but altered some, as a bit of a control measure. And he moved them to relatively cool places to try and give them a chance of survival. Rashek also wished to disguise the new location of the well, because he didn't want it just being left where other people knew it was. So he flattened the mountains, where the well was located and moved them south from the pole. He raised new mountains in the north to disguise what had happened, and then he buried the Well of Ascension underground.
I have a few questions.
And begun build.
The Well of Ascension has still got the ruins mined and trapped in there, right? Can that ever be taken out now?
Not for another 1,000 years.
Okay, that makes sense. Has this happened every? So has the hero got like these powers every 1,000 years? Has he become this powerful? Become preservation?
Possibly. We don't actually know how many times this has happened, but this is the time that we know about.
Yeah, because like this seems incredible. He's moving the fucking planets. Also, he's really shit at this, or it's really hard to be a god.
It's really hard to.
But also, like, it's clear that people before this have done it. They didn't fuck up the world. He clearly fucked.
Well, maybe they did.
Yeah.
And then maybe it had to get undone later. You don't know. Also, the thing that's really getting me about all of this is that literally, apart from... No, even Ruin, like, every single character in this is playing to what they think is the right thing to do. Which sucks for motivation, because there's no easy, like, villain... Like, yeah, there are people doing obviously bad shit, but, like, they're doing it for the reasons that they think is right.
The entire
no one's the villain of their own
concept
story.
of
Correct.
Mistborn is... What if the prophesized hero failed? Because Alendi was the prophesized hero, and he failed. And Rashek was the bad guy. He was the guy that came in and killed him and was like, yes, I will take the god power for myself, and then made this world.
But they did technically the right thing?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
it the right thing?
He's a bad person
so-
doing a good thing.
He became so these people that he created, the new ones that could survive the ash better, were called Scar. These were people, he made them shorter, hardier, and more fertile.
Dwarves.
Not dwarves, they're still very much people, but they're just not, they're just a bit more, they're a little bit shorter. I don't know. Take that as you will.
How
These
the fuck
physical
is being shorter
differences,
make you easier to go through ash? Ash, like, you
he altered like their internal physiology as well, so they could
Why the
breathe
fuck
better.
make them shorter?
I think shorter was just a byproduct of it. Seems.
Yeah. I don't know. Don't question.
They're small,
and
close to the
differences-
ground. Let's close to the ash. Boom.
Yeah.
Genius.
These physical differences were small, and over the next few thousand years, while he's in charge, while he is this god, they mostly, the physical, like obvious physical differences mostly get erased through Noble, the other type of people, and Scar interbreeding during the empire that he's about to create. So, Rashek also was also granted an understanding of the metallic arts. Ruin whispered to Rashek about the secrets of how to make the Colossus and the Inquisitors, servants that Ruin hoped to take control of himself one day, because he knew that if there were all these people out in the world that had spikes in them, as soon as he got his full power back, he could just go, yoink, that's mine now.
So wait, does Rashek have a spike in him?
Yes. No, he doesn't. Alendi did. Rashek doesn't, but because he's now preservation, him and Ruin are kind of on the same.
They have tea-chat sometimes, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Because he's taken over the well, which is trapping Ruin, so it's kind of like a
Ruin's that mind. Whenever he makes a mistake, Ruin's like, "You're an idiot."
Yeah, because the thing as well, none of them knew what Ruin was. They just knew that there was something trapped in the well. They didn't know what it was. They didn't know what it wanted. They just knew that it couldn't be released. So Rashek realized that the issue with this new world that he'd created was that all of the ferrochemists of his homeland would be very difficult to control, because they still had loads of knowledge in their copper minds that, the world didn't used to look like this, and that they wouldn't accept him as their leader because he'd murdered their prophesized hero Alendi. So Rashek offered a bargain to some of his closer friends and his uncle Quan. He would grant them immortality in exchange for their ferrochemy and humanity. Rashek's packmen, his friends, accepted the proposal, but Quan refused, saying it was a betrayal of who he was meant to be. Using the power of preservation, Rashek changed his friends, along with every other living ferrochemist, into a Mistwraith. A Mistwraith is a unintelligent blob that moves around taking on bits of bone and just growing into weird shapes. So he just blobbed all of them, basically.
But they're not going to die.
Correct. But the ones that were his close friends, he put spikes into, and that's what made them Kandra.
Okay.
So a Kandra is an intelligent Mistwraith. Without the spikes, it's just a blob that goes around randomly sucking in things and taking it into its shape.
Fair.
But when they're given the intelligence of the spikes, they can take human form and do whatever they want.
Do they still have their memories?
Yes, they do. The Kandra. So it's the
Interesting.
ones that were yeah, exactly.
This is a very high level story. None of these people are. All of these people are either like level 20 heroes or like BBEGs.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's interesting.
so-
Every time I hear that, if this happened every 1,000 years, this guy, what did he lose his powers, or like is that going to come up? Because he's obviously not immortal.
I'll get into it.
You don't know.
So he turned them from Mistwraith into Kandra. After this, the last of Rashek's power faded, and he returned to his regular state of existence.
there you go.
Although he was now known as a sliver of preservation. The final thing Rashek did, while he lost his power and it returned to the well, he made himself into a Mistborn. A Mistborn is an Allomancer that has access to every single medal, not just one.
Nice.
So he's like on the way out. He's like, "Give me powers."
Yes, and the other thing that he did was introduce to the world 2 new medals. Well, kind of introduced to the world 2 new medals, but he kept them secret. because
Honestly,
it's
he
all-
doesn't sound like he's preserving much. He sounds like he's fucking with things.
He's preserving himself.
That's true.
Well, he's kept the world alive.
I guess it was doing fine without him, and he kind of.
Well, it was about to die, but
like,
anyway, 'cause the mist was about to kill the world.
Yeah, but he kind of like what did he do? He moved the planet and nearly burned everyone dead.
Yeah, but it's better than everyone dying from the mist.
So, the 2 new medals he made were Lerasium and Atium. Lerasium was a bead which, when ingested, turned someone into a Mistborn.
Nice.
Interesting.
That was Preservation, and it was made from Preservation's body. Atium was made from Ruin's body, and when ingested and burnt by someone with the ability to burn it, it allowed them to... It basically enabled God mode in a fight. You would see from your opponent that you're fighting, you would see a silhouette that shows you what they're about to do. So, say someone's coming at you with a knife, you'll see like a silhouette of their knife arm moving before their arm actually moves. So it basically lets you just win any fight because you can see exactly what your opponent's going to do long before they do it.
It doesn't let you win any fight. If they have, like, if you're tied up and they have a gun, you can see they're going to shoot you. You can't do anything about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you get what I mean.
So yeah, but that's really interesting because like that's like it's kind of like Spidey sense in like Spider-Man sense, or kind of like Taskmaster can like see what you're about to do and stuff like that.
That kind of thing.
Preservation and Ruin's body. I thought that those were destroyed ages ago.
Ruin's body was hidden in the world.
In
It
the
has now
world.
in the world of Scadrial.
It's
It
not
is
in the
now
well. Okay, right.
In the world, yeah. So it is now in the form of this metal known as Atium.
Do we know where it ended up? Was he in like someone's cupboard or something?
Was he
It was kind of scattered throughout the world as this metal.
Was it under someone's floorboards?
Yeah. So his plan, he discovered as well that because he was now not just an Allomancer, not just a ferrochemist, he was both. That also with the knowledge of hemalurgy, so he had all 3 magic systems under his belt. He could do a thing that basically let him become immortal by using Atium's ferrochemical property, which lets you store age and youth. So he could continuously recharge himself using Atium to basically make himself live forever. And his plan was...
Interesting.
Doesn't he naturally age? So how would that? He's on a net loss. He's bucketing water into the boat and then bucketing it out again.
He has
the
the preservation. He's getting it for preservation. He has all magic from the metal. He has the metal. He has the stuff he's getting from himself, but he also has the other magic that allows you to bring in from preservation.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Yeah, so the specific thing of it is a combination. It's called compounding, and it basically, if someone has allomancy and ferrochemy, they can store a trait inside a metal via their ferrochemy, and then they can ingest the metal and burn it themselves as an allomancer, and then that gives them a supercharged version of it.
Okay.
Okay, interesting.
So he would take the ATM, he would store his youth into the ATM, he'd then ingest the ATM and burn it, and then that gives him a supercharged
So he puts
youth.
one in, gets 2 out.
Yeah.
Cool.
But it does start to wane, like, towards the end of his, like, days, if he were to separate from his ATM wristbands at all, he would age like super quick. So
But
he becomes very dependent on it.
it
But,
still massively extends your lifespan for a pretty
his
relatively easy price.
His plan was to survive in this world that he now created, calling the Final Empire, and his new empire.
My new empire.
And his plan was to survive for 1,024 years until Preservation's power returned to the well, so that he could basically have another attempt, because he learnt a lot in the time that he did it. Like, you can see he started out trying to move a planet and fucking it up, and by the end of it he was able to create complex microbes and stuff and plants that could break down ash.
But he was waning power, so he wasn't
Was
quite
it?
able to.
Did he have like a time limit, or did he have like a
Yeah, it was a time limit.
Okay, I was like thinking, is it like an amount of power, amount of investment you have that like runs out? Moving a planet, or is it his time limit?
I'll give the full quote. So the subtlety displayed in the ash-eating microbes and enhanced plants show that Rashek got better and better at using the power. It burned in a matter of minutes, but to a god, minutes can pass like hours.
Yeah.
During that time, Rashek began as an ignorant child who shoved a planet too close to the sun, grew into an adult who could create ash mounts to cool the air, and then finally became a mature artisan who could develop plants and creatures for specific purposes.
And now he can have another go and make it all better.
And
and
now
just-
he's
Exactly.
like, okay, I've learned from my mistakes. Give me the god powers again, please.
Is he-
That
nice
was
now?
that was his plan.
Because he was a dick before. He he manipulated his best friend, then killed him. I know
but
for
he's
good
trying to
reasons.
save the planet, so he's obviously not totally selfish.
Yeah.
So he makes this final empire, and his plan is to rule over people as this deity. He becomes known as the Lord Ruler.
He's a bit
and
arrogant.
His plan is to rule over as the Lord Ruler for 1,024 years until he can have another try. 1,000 years is a long time to live.
That is true.
So the Lord Ruler began his so he came back into the world after being at the Well of Ascension, and he had these fucking colossus behind him, mainly, and he began to conquest to get the whole world under his thumb, so he could just watch over everything until 1,000 years had passed. He began his conquest by finding leaders who were more amicable to making him emperor of the world, and secured their support by giving them the Lerasium, which let them become Mistborn. Pretty good trade offer. You worship me as an emperor, you become a Mistborn. He also used the Colossus, the unstoppable fucking monsters, to destroy the cities that were already weakened by, years of no food and stuff. Ultimately, it took him around 2 centuries to conquer the whole world, although some religions resisted him until 5 centuries after.
Oh, not too bad.
Rashek established the capital in the city of Luthadel, which he built over the Well of Ascension. Good place to watch over it. The Lord Ruler ruled the Final Empire for 1,024 years, waiting for the well to refill so he could take up the power again. During this time, Ruin began to talk to the Lord Ruler through some spikes that he had, which he's used to boost himself up, manipulating the power of the Lord Ruler, and playing off his insecurities and fears. The Lord Ruler began performing measures that would protect humanity somewhat should Ruin ever break free. He started by hiding as much of the ATM as he could, weakening Ruin as much as possible. Rashek had his obligators, who I'll get to in a sec, secretly remove the ATM from most of the places where it was mined. A little ATM was shipped to Luthadel to be held by the Lord Ruler, or sold to noblemen. All the rest was taken to the Kandra homeland, which were his old friends, a metal-rich area which was near the mines. Whenever the Lord Ruler returned some ATM to the homeland, it was hidden secretly, and it was transported with gold and other metals so that Ruin couldn't see it. Rashek also began digging storage caverns beneath several cities in the Final Empire, containing food, water, and other basic survival needs.
And metal.
Yep. And also acting as a shelter for humanity. He also put metal plates in the caverns, giving clues about the next cavern's location, along with queries that he was beginning to think about with Ruin and thoughts that he had, because he didn't figure it out. He didn't know Ruin fully. He was trying to work it out. Because he was prepared for the fact that he might die to Ruin and someone else may have to take up the well after him. So the quote here, we are nearing the end, don't worry. So, quote, "I am only beginning to understand the brilliance of the Lord Ruler's cultural synthesis as he remade the world. One of the benefits afforded him by being both immortal and, for all relevant purposes, omnipotent was a direct and effective influence on the evolution of the Final Empire. He was able to take elements from a dozen different cultures and apply them to his new perfect society. For instance, the architectural brilliance of the Clenny builders is manifest in the keeps and the high nobility construct. He uses the Clennium fashion sense, suits for gentlemen, gowns for ladies, so he took that from them along with their castles and keeps. I suspect that despite his hatred of the Clenny people, of whom Alendi was, Reshek had a deep-seated envy of them as well. The terrorists of the time were pastoral herdsmen, and the Clenny were fucking cultured as shit, so... However, ironic it is logical that Reshek's new empire would mimic the high culture of the people he hated, because they were good for a reason. Reshek made good use of his enemy's culture in developing the Final Empire, yet other elements of his imperial culture were a complete contrast to Clennium and his society. The liars of the Scar people eventually became modelled after the slave peoples of the Kanzi. The Terrace Stewarts resembled, so some of the leftover Terrace people, the non-ferrochemists, resembled the servant class of the another kingdom that were destroyed by him, which Reshek conquered relatively late in his first century of life. The imperial religion, with its obligators, actually appears to have arisen from a bureaucratic mercantile system of another kingdom, which he appropriated. So yeah, the point is, he's just kind of hybridized a whole bunch of other kingdoms and combined them into this one thing.
It makes sense. That's what makes empires so strong.
Yeah, pretty much. It do be like that. Where's that one? That's what I wanted to look at. So yeah, into the final bits, I promise.
Oh god, what's a recording like at this point?
It's not as bad as I
Congratulations if
thought
you've
it was.
lasted this long. 2 hours 24.
There's so
Okay.
much Mistborn.
What can I say? I wasn't expecting to talk about the magic as long as it did. Whoopsies.
Still shorter than zombies, I think.
Maybe. Yeah, true, because we went for like an hour the first time and then like nearly 2 hours the second time.
yeah.
So true. So the yeah. So there's not so I've talked a little bit about the way he hybridized things, but the way that he used ATM in kind of a genius way, he based the entire economy around ATM. And it was one of the many ways that Lord Ruler kept a firm hold on the Final Empire. Its scarcity, along with its godly allomantic uses, makes ATM an extremely valuable currency. A small bead of ATM valuable enough to cover the cost of a living for someone for like years and years and years. Because he just inflated the value of it to be that high. So mining, the only place ATM can be mined is a place called the Pits of Hathsin, where Scar criminals are sent to work as punishment for their crimes until death. One noble house is in charge of the profitable mining camp, with House Venture being the last house to oversee the operation before the destruction of the mine. The fact that ATM is mined here is kept top secret. Not a single prisoner has escaped before a character from the book, who is one of the protagonists. The transportation, a portion of the ATM mined at the pits is secretly transported to Lutherdel by the Canton of Resource, who are kind of like his government dogs, mixed into and disguised as ministry funds. Since metal coins radiate powerful light in the cognitive realm, the ADM beads, when mixed with other coins, can be transported safely without being discovered by Ruin. So he would hide the ATM with other metals to make it hidden. Then the Khandra, they got their cut, which they kept secret. And then, so basically, he mined it, and he had control of the mining operation. He had control of how much was sent where, and he had control of how much he let out into the public of the noble houses, who then put a really high price on it.
Do you ever get bored and just go like, haha, yeah. Throw like a bead at a beggar?
Oh, exactly. He could do that. And the big thing as well, which was kind of, because ultimately he wanted all of the ATM hidden with the Khandra so that Ruin could never get to it, but he also needed a way to keep it under control. So what he did, he set up with the Khandra a contract system where the noble houses could pay with ATM to use the shapeshifters as servants, basically.
Oh.
So they could use them to do big political things, because, I mean, a shapeshifter who's fucking, like, a perfect shapeshifter.
I mean, they could only transfer the people they'd swallowed, though, right?
Yeah, so they have to eliminate the
They have to
person
kill
and
them,
take
but
over.
like it's really useful, but they have to kill them. You know.
Yeah, and the thing with the
I mean,
council,
if you were
after
going to
their-
hire someone that expensive, then you would have a plan to include like their assassination as part of the ruse or something like that.
I agree, but you could just be like, I want my political enemy to be this person because you'd have to kill your political enemy first to kill me that person.
yeah,
Which you
exactly.
could do, but like, you know what I mean.
And the thing with the Afghanis as well, because they've had thousands of years, well, hundreds of years of practice, they're really good at studying someone, learning everything about them, and then taking them over so they can continue to act as them.
Do they all enjoy doing it?
They neither enjoy nor
I think
not
it's in their
enjoy.
nature.
They're just
Old
kind
enough
of,
that they don't
it's in
care.
their,
that's
like,
fair.
they just kind of are, yeah. And they see it as that it's what they have to do to get all the ATM into their homeland where they can keep it safeguarded. So
Yeah.
Then I'll talk a little bit about the Steel Ministry, who are the government of the Lord Ruler. One of the main functions of the ministry is to witness a myriad of contracts and agreements, even something as simple as a promise to come to a game. Just anything with the nobility, the Lord, they have to pay the Lord Ruler for the services of the obligators, and the obligators have to witness every deal that's made for it to be considered legitimate. And the nobility pay the Lord Ruler for their services in a similar manner so that they technically... Actually, I'll mention that after. As the authority in bureaucratic matters, any mercantile contracts, divorces, weddings, land purchases, inheritances, and other important dealings could only be authorized by obligators. They basically have a lot of power. If one of the ministry hasn't witnessed an event or sealed the document, it might as well have not have happened.
Nice.
However, obligators are used to witness less formal agreements, such as bets between friends. So, like, when there's a fancy ball happening, the obligators are present, and then people will be like, hey, obligator, witness this. I bet with old Jove here that that one can't sink that drink, whatever.
Yo, you can't make there are no small bets in this universe. Like,
No, exactly.
like if you
exactly.
make a bet, like, it's like, oh, you won't do.
There are small bets. You just don't have to go through with it.
No.
Yeah.
I imagine like everything has to go through these guys. That'll be very fun.
Oh, yeah. I won't go, because I could go into more detail with them, but I'm just going to go into detail of a little bit of one thing. So they're split into cantons. There is the Canton of Finance, the Bank of the Final Empire. Canton of Finance directs financial operations in the Final Empire. Its responsibility also includes the transport of money. Simple enough. Canton of Resource. They're tasked with trade, transportation, and taxation for the most part. They oversee resources. That's the simplest way to think about it. The Canton of Inquisition is where the Steel Inquisitors that I mentioned before come into it, the spiky ones. They act as law enforcement, especially over the Alamantic community. Members of the Canton of Inquisition have usually have tattoos around their eyes, with the addition of stark red lines on the side of their face. Administrators in this canton collect and file information that might assist in the policing efforts. This information is about noble houses, Scar rebels, and other cantons. Because the big thing, the Scar are not meant to have access to Alamancy. It is a gift of the nobles. The problem is the nobles do what nobles do and interbreed, so you get the occasional Scar that inherits some genes of Alamancy. It is a large job of the Inquisitors to go around hunting Scar Alamancers.
I'm going to hazard a guess that there's a protagonist who's a Scar that has Alamancy powers.
The entire thieving crew.
Nice.
Basically,
Nice.
the thing is, the entire criminal underworld, it's not, the thieving crew main characters aren't the only ones, there's loads of them, but there's, especially in the capital, where there's, I think it's meant to be, 4 million people that live in the capital city. A lot of them, most of them are Scar, because the Scar basically become slaves in this world, because the nobles rule over them. The Inquisitors go around, they try to police the Scar Alamancers and such, as well as noble houses as well, if a noble house puts a toe out of line, because it's also kind of their job to worship the Lord Ruler.
Can people be more?
Yeah.
Can people be born Mistborn, or do you have to swallow that pill thing?
I'll get to that in a sec. So then the last one is the Canton of Orthodoxy. They organize and presides over the Steel Ministry and has jurisdiction over the religious aspects of the ministry. This canton is the main bureaucratic division of the ministry. Obligators in this canton are typically the ones that formalize contracts and agreements. So,
Shouldn't mix church and state. Mistake.
well, yes. Except the problem is the ruler is the Lord Ruler, who is the god, basically.
Fair.
You can't really get rid of that when the leader is God.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's pretty much the world.
So is it a
Lord Ruler's plan-
theocracy?
So the Lord Ruler's plan was ultimately he created these different breeds of people to better survive the Ash. The issue is he accidentally created a slave race, which meant that the noble houses began to rule over the Scar as slaves, which he used to try to stop, but after a few hundred years, he just kind of gave up because he had bigger things to worry about.
So
the
he's not a
release of
terrible
the
guy.
god.
He didn't make the race thing
yeah,
go,
just
oh,
bigger
they're
things
useful
to worry
for
about
they're
than
useful
the
for slave.
enslavement of a race.
Well, one person who can do a lot of power as opposed to like millions of people, it was a big struggle.
Yeah.
I
I mean,
Not
Yeah.
entirely fair. Shitty, but
he
yeah.
I'm trying to think. Like, he did make the race, and then they returned to slaves. At least he tried to stop him. Ah, it's bad.
Yeah.
I don't want to redeem this.
It's bad. No.
And then, yeah, so you can kind of see what happened. Throughout the years, the Scar tried to rebel a number of times. The problem is no one could ever kill the Lord Ruler because he's the Lord Ruler. They try to poison him. He has a metal band of ferrochemy gold that stops him dying from that. They try to cut him in half. Before they can cut through him, he's killed them, and then he heals himself over with his gold. He doesn't die of age. There's like nothing they can do.
Gold's pretty useful.
Yeah,
A bomb.
especially
Get a
in this,
bomb.
There is no gunpowder in this world.
Big set.
The other thing that happened, the Lord Ruler froze technological advancement. He was particularly worried about how things like gunpowder and future technologies may affect the world, so when he reshaped the world, he set them back a bit technology-wise, and then anytime someone looked like they were about to make a technological leap, the Steel Inquisitors killed them.
He has oracle powers, so he can see that.
Damn, that's
Right.
not great.
He has medals. Yeah, and that was one of the things as well of the Steel Inquisition. They would go around searching for people that are doing that sort of shit, and that would be unholy, and they would brutally murder whoever was doing it. So yeah, that's the world we're presented with at the start of the book, where we have a couple of characters who want to start a Scar rebellion to overthrow the Lord Ruler.
I'm sure
Because
that
he is
goes poorly, because he's a very powerful man, and he hasn't left any gaps in his defenses.
Not at all. Yeah, that's the, yeah.
That's it?
That's that's
Is that where the book
Damn.
start? Is that where the book start right there?
That's where the book starts.
That's
Okay.
so much
So
information to have before the books.
Yeah, wow. Do you learn all this throughout the books? Like, how do you get all this information?
Pretty much everything I said at the start involving the Cosmere kind of has nothing to do with the books. That's all outside things.
Yeah, makes sense.
From the where I started talking about the magic
Like this
systems
world.
onwards, that is all stuff that you learn throughout the books in small tidbits until it finally all unravels in the final book
Ah,
at
okay.
key parts.
Okay, interesting.
Because the world you're presented with at the start of the book is evil tyrant who became a god and is ruling over everyone and made a slave race, and we're trying to stop him.
Makes sense.
Whereas
He
he's
doesn't.
not quite as black
He
and white as
doesn't
that.
sound great, but there's
I mean, he isn't great.
he's not the best person, but he's not the worst person.
Yeah.
He has some. I mean, with everyone, he's done some redeemable things in his
It's
time.
also one of those things that is always a recognized thing with immortality, which is that being alive for that long makes you very much lose track of the
Which-
little morality.
Which, yeah, is 100% what he does. It goes from, in the early days of his rule, when there was a rebellion, he'd be like, oh my god, we have to quell this, oh my god, we have to stop this, to in the final days of his rule, when there's a rebellion, his reaction is just like, that's so many fucking workers I'm gonna have to kill and replace.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's there's also I mean that comes back in Star Wars for people with reference. There's text out there about the Sith making a lot of sense when they talk about Yoda, who's been alive for 900 years, directing the stuff and not worrying about the people. I'm like, that's a good point actually. He doesn't care about him because he's so old. He loses the touch.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there you go. I might do
Mistborn
depending.
actually crazy.
That
crazy
sounds
nice.
fun. I love
Yeah.
the physics of it. I love the
Yeah,
stuff you can do.
I wanted to do a kind of general one on the world, but I might do a future one that's just more specific, talking
This is
about the
magic,
three magic
basic
systems.
world and introduction.
I don't know what
Yeah,
I'm going to
yeah.
title this one. Mistborn,
Mistborn and stuff.
magic and world.
Mistborn before the born.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Mistborn. Where's the mist come from?
Where does it come from? But you know
Where'd you
where?
go?
Do you know where you can find us? You can find
Do you know
us.
where you can go?
You can go
Dot
to
Night Joe?
Facebook at Facebook.com at Living by the Law and Twitter at Living by the Law to keep up to date on what we're doing and where we're going.
Nowhere and nothing.
Continually. And you can continue to support us on this podcast. One big thing you can do. Two big things you can do, actually. I have two for you. I know it's a big challenge, but we appreciate it. Tell a friend. Share this podcast if you enjoyed. And if you got through all of this, then it's a long time. Either you've fallen asleep or you've done well. And the second thing you can do is you can leave us a review on iTunes because that really helps us.
If people want to share it with
Yes.
their friends, I've got a good intro. Try and tell them about some of the lore first, and if they tell you to piss off, then probably don't bother. You know, some of the people just don't want this sort of stuff. But if they listen and they are interested, I've got a little tip for them. There's a whole bunch more in these
There's
episodes.
so many. And we cover all different topics. We cover books, we cover TV shows, we cover movies, we cover games, we cover anything. And hey, if you want us to cover a certain topic, chuck us a message and there's a chance it could happen.
There's a chance. I've
There's
got
a
a to-do
chance.
list, and somewhere in there there's Bionicle's lore. I'll
There's
get to it
somewhere in there.
sometime.
Tyler.
Yeah.
So-
Anyway, thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. Have a good afternoon.
and may you have a
Yeah.
misty born.
And don't put your planet too close to the sun.
That's irresponsible.
do it.
That's
Don't do it.
irresponsible.
Don't do it.
Or
This
too
is-
far away. That's also
Just
irresponsible.
get
Just
an air.
don't move the
No,
planet.
Hey, listen. Couldn't he have just made like one of those big oxygen filters?
Yeah, just get a big air conditioning unit and place it in the middle of
Like,
the...
not an air conditioning unit. One of those air filter things.
Just get a big...
Well, you see,
he should just
well,
build
there's
a
actually
big fan.
there's actually a really simple secret to how he fixes it. I'll tell you guys. So
Thank you for listening to Living by the Law. If you enjoyed our podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes and tell your friends. The link is in the description, and thank you in advance. Also, follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Living by the Law to keep updated on all the latest about our podcast. We have been, and always will be, living by the law. Thank you for your company,